and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second round of the UKSimRacing Community's GT3 League Season 10, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today, we're in round 2 of 8. The story continues, and we've made our way from Austria to neighbouring Spain for the one and only Jerez circuit. Known in full as the Circuito de Jerez, Ángel Nieto, the circuit which is a celebration, of course, of the legendary Spanish motorcyclist Ángel Nieto Roldán. The 2.75 mile Moto GP layout of the course shall play host to our drivers in their GT3 class machines today, and with this circuit being recently introduced to iRacing, it is a circuit like no other when it comes to sweeping corners and long extended sequences. With the fact around here, there's very gradual elevation changes combined with a relatively smooth road surface. It means that it's all about carrying the speed from corner to corner, which is going to lead to the ultimate success, which is the victory in class. However, on top of that as well, you do have to keep in mind, with there being limited straights around here, overtaking opportunities come at a premium, and it's also about staying close to your rival in front if you want to try and make a move, and of course needing to be bold on the brakes. And as our drivers get set in the background right now, putting in their final practice laps before we head into our qualifying session in due course, we need to take you through a little bit of housekeeping firstly, in the fact that you're tuning in live by the official UKSimRacing YouTube channel. Indeed, if you go to youtube.com and search for UKSimRacing, you can tune in there, and indeed we say hello to you guys and girls in the chat. And we should point out, now, this broadcast is not on your typical Sunday, with the racing actually having occurred for round number 2 on what was Sunday the 9th of April 2023. We're bringing you all the racing action as if it were live for the purposes of circuit side as of this Wednesday the 12th of April. That means this is a post-round broadcast, but in terms of what you can expect to be different here, well, the racing may not technically be live, but the broadcast is, and therefore it's going to be as close as possible to the raw live experience. And I, as your host and commentator, do not know what happens, whether it be in the final practice session, which is currently ongoing, in the qualifying session, alternatively in the race itself. But I'm getting ahead of myself slightly here. Allow me to introduce myself as your host and commentator. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I will bring you all your racing action indeed today and for the remainder of the season. And we do politely ask, if you are one of the drivers who took part in this race, but you do know the outcome of the race in today, well, we do ask you to avoid giving away any potential spoilers for the simple reason there's going to be guys and girls tuning in at home who may not know, and also I've done my very best to avoid any potential spoilers. And indeed, whilst I may be giving some indications of what to look out for, I can definitely tell you right now, I can't remember who wins this race, and I haven't really been told who wins across the 3 classes. But as we look ahead to the season, we can see that as we make our way into the depth of this season, we've still got plenty of races to go. And whilst we're in Spain today, next week we'll be making our way to the United States of America for round number 3 at the Belle Isle Circuit in the city of Detroit in the state of Michigan. That'll be on the 16th of April, followed up by round number 4, which concludes the first half of the season at the combined layout of the Nürburgring, or known in full as the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke in Germany, for our first feature race round of the season on the 23rd of April, after which we'll have our first of 2 break weeks. And that 1 week will then be followed up by a single race round in the form of round number 5 at Road America, back to the United States, indeed the state of Wisconsin, for round number 5 on the 7th of May in another sprint. And then we have our second break week before returning to the run-in for the second half of the season. And that'll be round number 6 starting off at Okayama in Japan, the T1 IDA circuit as it used to be known, and that'll be playing host to our drivers in the sprint race round on the 21st of May. Now, penultimate round, we're making our way back to the United States, and that's where we'll be staying for the remainder of the season, starting off in the state of New York at Watkins Glen International on the 28th of May, and we'll be bringing it all to a close with round number 8 in the state of Florida, the Sunshine State. We'll be playing host to our drivers at the Daytona Road Course Circuit in our second feature on the 4th of June. Now, all of our broadcasts, minus tonight, are going to be a live circuit side, but it will be a post-round broadcast today, and of course that's because of the fact that I was attending British GT as of the weekend, and therefore not able to do it from circuit side. But still, as we head into today, let's give you a quick reminder of our championship standings, and we start off, of course, with the elite class. And after 1 of 8 rounds, it is Jacko Taylor who leads for UKSimRacing after a do-or-die daring move under braking 3 wide into turn at number 3 at the Red Bull Ring, and was able to take the win despite the immense pressure from Ignium Motorsport's Hekon Gustad. Sam Congreve in P3 there for Empire Motorsport A, ahead of teammate Joe Newman, and the 2 Empire Motorsport drivers put in a great pair of performances, and they'll be looking to follow that up today. There's no question about it, with Martin Tillin in P5 there for UKSimRacing Corpa, pulls around off the top 5 there and looking to have a good shot at potentially picking up a podium. In P6, it's Nathan Foster ahead of Alexander Hill, with Nick Wren, Philip Schwerker and John Eddowes completing the top 10. And then best of the rest there, Jonathan Hitchin ruined what could have been for Symphony Esports White with a win on the cards, only for it to end up in disaster midway through the race. But he'll be looking to bounce back today, there's no question about that, with Darryl Norquette, Travis Wallace, Ryan Davies, Mark Davidson, Cole McGurk, David Flanagan and Austin William Campbell completing the elite standings. We then come on to the pro class meanwhile, and we can see here in the pro class, it is Nathan J. Scott who leads the way, albeit by 3 points after picking up a near-perfect performance, and the Empire Motorsport B driver absolutely on fire in the Porsche 911, and will he be able to do that again today, given the fact that the circuit is going to suit cars that are smart on rotation and indeed fast on the draft when it comes to getting back to full throttle as soon as possible on corner exit. However, let's not count out UKSimRacing Moss's Peter Cox, who in the BMW M4 looking for a strong and stable car, and he'll be looking to keep it calm and carrying on as he makes his way on around the Jerez circuit. And David Larson as well, the Symphony Esports White driver, the Ghostbuster of the field, if you will, with a 306 car. We're looking to put the Demons of the Red Bull Ring at bay and look to try and bring home the win today. It's Brandon Hay in P4 ahead of Darren Sharples, with Richard Jones just outside the top 5 there in the 99 car in the BMW M4. And then we do have Oyvind Brivik ahead of James Rankin, with Billy Bob Ray and Matt Strand completing the top 10. Best of the rest, Ollie Pimley for Symphony Esports Black ahead of Tony D. Hobbs, Rob Armstrong, Paul Robson, Casper Brotner, Yo Amos and Darren Fellows who complete your pro standings. And as we come onto the AM class classification, we can see here Mark Johnson leads the way on 40 points for UKSimRacing Moss in what was a round where all of the AMs ended up running very low on fuel towards the end, but Mark Johnson and John Doble in particular were able to avoid the challenge of what was fuel saving, in the fact they saved from the outset and therefore did not have to sip on the fuel come the very end. Meanwhile, other drivers found themselves at the bottom end of the spectrum when it came to having the fuel available, but Matt Maddox made it across the line in P3 there for BDM Racing, and he was able to follow through with a great start to his season ahead of the man who looks to be the one to beat in terms of pace in the race and qualifying, and that is Thomas Asphaug. As we can see there, the Racing Lab AM driver with the Ferrari 488, well, he may have finished P4 on circuit, but he was definitely looking absolutely ferocious, and he's going to be one to watch out for tonight. Simon Andre Livingstone, meanwhile, completed the top 5 for Racing Lab AM1 ahead of Stein Arsani, with Thomas Barjak P7, Satinder Dinza in P8, and James Connolly and Simon Hartley completing the top 10. Best of the rest of PLM and John Ruldridge, and then we have Matt Edmondson, Daniel Pays, Marvin Cruz, Joe Pinder, Frank Klein, Eric Stegen, Ben Watkinson and Baz Meacham completing the AM standings. We also give you a quick recap of the team standings, and we can see here after one round it's UKSimRacing Moss who lead the way by 7 points over Empire Motorsport B, with Empire Motorsport A following suit only a point behind, and it's Tiki Simsport who complete the top 5 ahead of Racing Lab AM1. Outside the top 5, Racing Lab AM continue to try and hunt down the top 5 order as rapidly as possible, with Tiki Simsport Kimi, Tiki Simsport Cobba, and then Symphony Esports White ahead of Eden Motorsport completing your top 10, and it's Best of the Rest BDM Racing ahead of the other teams of CHR Motorsport, Tiki Simsport Tour, Symphony Esports Black, Revolution Sim Racing, Racing Forces, Old Dudes and Cars, and UKSimRacing Hunt, who've yet to get any points on the board. But as we come from our standings then, let's talk a little bit about our circuit for today, and of course it's none other than the circuit located near the city limits of Jerez de la Frontera, and it is Circuito de Jerez and Ángel Nieto, with our drivers taken to the MotoGP layout. They're not quite going to the Grand Prix layout of this Spanish circuit located in the region of Andalusia in Spain. The difference being that this circuit will omit the final chicane, and indeed many of our drivers are very grateful for the fact the rather tricky chicane has been omitted, for the simple reason it means that this circuit carries a much greater flow to it. But of course this circuit no stranger to being featured on major motorsporting calendars, not just MotoGP but Formula 1 in previous years, albeit Formula 1 no longer visiting the Jerez circuit and focusing more on the circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia, also in Spain. But as our drivers head on around here, you can see from the circuit map provided to us by iRacing.com. Thank you to them for their wonderful simulator and of course their wonderful circuit maps to go with it. This circuit is all about that flow of medium speed apexes, and as our drivers make their way across the start finish line up towards turn number 1, they'll head all the way up the hill towards Expo 92 corner, and then it's going to be a gradual rise into a braking zone as they make their way up the gradient, but as they clear the right angled right hander they'll head down slightly into turn number 2. They're again on the brakes, and the first of a number of hairpins at this circuit as they break the way on in before charging out full throttle through the kink of 3 and heading through the long left hander at turn number 4. They'll head up into Sito Pond's corner at turn number 5. There it's going to be an elevation change, a significant rise towards the corner apex, and as our drivers hit the apex they'll look to get back to full throttle as soon as possible, but wary of the fact that if they go too aggressively onto the throttle they may find themselves being launched a little bit wide and onto the gravel. If they get it just right they'll carry all the speed they need down the back stretch down towards turn number 6, a dry sack corner into the second hairpin, and braking hard into the slowest corner on the circuit it could be argued. They'll come on out before preparing their way up towards turn number 7. The left-hander, which precedes a much tighter double left-hand apex of West Aspar corner at turn number 8. There it's all about getting back to the throttle as soon as possible, but also making sure not to dig too deep on corner exit as they bring the car over for the combination of course of turns 9 and 10, and Jonito onto Peluqui, and as they make their way through the double right-hander where the apex is tighten all the way through, they'll then make their way down towards Alex Creville corner at turn number 11, and of course this is where we missed the GP chicane, and they go through the double right of Creville, through Ferrari as well at turns 11 and 12, and down towards the final corner. Turn number 13, the third of the 3 hairpins here, and it is Lorenzo corner, where our drivers will also find themselves having to go into a much tighter hairpin on pit entry, but when they don't go into the pits, they'll break the wheel in, and this is where we could see some major overtaking opportunities as they come through the final corner and head onto the start-finish straight. And indeed, I'm a bit breathless talking about the circuit, let alone because this circuit is breathtaking in terms of the flow around there. But to give you a quick reminder of the rules before we go racing, well, we firstly see that car setup-wise, drivers are permitted to change their car without penalty until the conclusion of round 3. So whilst we did see a lot of drivers take the Mercedes-AMG Evo 2020 machine, particularly in the elite class last time out, expect there's going to be a number of car changes here, and we can also see that car fuel load shall be restricted to 45% for all races. In terms of qualifying, an open qualifying format shall be used. Indeed, it was very popular last week, but the difference will be that all 3 driver classes shall be out on circuit simultaneously for this round, and that is due to the fact a good number of the live stewarding in terms of race control was not available due to the British GT event, and therefore all 3 classes have been given permission to head to the circuit all together, and that is going to add to a major challenge when it comes to finding the ultimate lap time, because you've got to find space as well as that ultimate lap. To go on to our further set of rules with regards to the races in general, we can see there that races shall commence via double fold rolling start. This is the tradition of GT3 racing at UKSimRacing. There are no mandatory pit stop requirements, but our drivers will be expected to make at least 1 pit stop given the fuel loads they take into the race, and each driver has 1 fast repair available. There shall be no potential deployment of a safety car for this round, and that is again because of the fact our race director not available to conduct the safety car procedure, and all race stewarding shall be conducted post-race. Now in terms of the sprint race, drivers shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points, and the driver shall be disqualified if they accumulate 25 or more instant points. So indeed, we've got to be wary of the fact that some drivers may come into the pits and it may not be for a pit stop or indeed repair. But as we look to our live pictures now, as our drivers get ready, will we bring up our info for today, and we bring up your schedule of course, and you can see times in British summertime, that's BST or Universal Coordinated Time +1 at UTC +1 in what is approximately 7.5 minutes time. We head into our qualifying session, 30 minutes in duration, all our drivers out on circuit, and it is going to be absolutely crowded on circuit. There's going to be no question about it, with the fact that we do have in attendance 40 drivers, and what I can tell you right now, with 20 drivers on this circuit, it feels packed. 40 double that is going to feel as though there's barely any breathing room, but they'll find a way on through, we can count on that. And then straight afterwards we'll have a brief transition, we're making our way to the grid for the purposes of our one and only race today. It's the round 2 sprint here in Spain, and that'll be 45 minutes, and well, it is going to be no holds barred, and all our drivers will be absolutely charging from start to finish. And I can tell you right now, it is a scorcher here. It is 26 degrees ambient temperature, but look at that track temperature in the bottom left hand corner of our overlay, and you can see they're 41 degrees centigrade currently. It is going to be harsh on those tyres. Indeed, our drivers will need to be careful of the fact they lock up or slide at all, and the tyres are going to take blistering like no other. But as we get ready to go, we do look to our drivers heading on around right now, including Philipp Schwerker as the German makes his way on through towards the end of the lap, and well, as we see him heading on through here with less than 7 minutes to go very shortly. The thing for him last time out, the privateer, was it all went wrong when it was going so very right, running up front with the leaders in the elite class, but in the end not taking enough fuel in the pits and having to save fuel on the final lap from the very outset. And well, for the 63 driver, he'll look to try and right wrongs today as he makes his way on around and gets himself all set. In fact, coming on down there towards turn number 6, flying on through here and onto the brakes very shortly, and with the Porsche 911 he's staying with the car that did so very well for him at the Red Bull Ring. Indeed, we could expect a good number of drivers to stay in their respective cars rather than do the switch on a multitude of occasions. The same could also be said for Jacko Taylor, albeit he's decided to switch cars as the TE Simsport driver makes his way on around, and in the Audi R8 GT3 today, we're going to have a bit more rotation in the car, and will that work out for him? As we do say hello to a good number of you in the YouTube chat, including Billy Bob from Empire Racing, who says good evening. Oh, hi Paul, let's go round 2 to ace the pit stop again. And indeed, it is going to be an important one to ace those pit stops, no question about it. We also say hello there to Thomas Aspel in the YouTube chat, who cheered on himself of course, and saying nailed my surname there. And I must admit, I did have a little chat with Thomas after the round 1 race, the did politely educate me in the best way to pronounce his surname, and well, I do have a habit of butchering surnames, but of course, if any of our drivers do hear that I butchered their surname, they're very quick to let me know, and it's always great to have a little bit of a conversation there. Always happy to learn a little bit more. We also say hello there to Si Anthony, good evening to you, Si. Also to Nathan Foster, who waves, and also to Marvin Cruz there, who says, looking forward to this, as unfortunately I missed this race myself. Well, Marvin, yeah, I think you're definitely going to be in for a treat from what I'm gathering, as we do look to with Martin Tilley making his way up towards turn number 1 in the TD SimSport Corporate 91 Porsche 911. And as he heads up the hill, we do have a number of newcomers join us on the grid today. And some of them, of course, were registered for round number 1 but didn't quite make it onto the grid, whereas others are joining for the first time this season and have signed up in between rounds 1 and 2. And well, let's introduce them if they are out on circuit, or at least in the pit lane. And our newcomers do include, well, we just find our little bit of notes there, and it starts off with Travis Wallace, as you see him there in the TD SimSport Tour number 13 car, albeit getting a little bit elbows out. There were John Goldridge as they made the way on through the right-hander and heading on down to what is turn number 13. Onto the brakes, Wallace goes there, and both drivers definitely getting their elbows out. I think coming out of turn 12 into 13, they're going to be wary of that when they do go racing, as the TD SimSport Tour driver brings his way on down, and as he heads his way up towards turn number 1 in the elite class here, and we look forward to seeing how he gets on. And just to give you a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, how can you tell who's in which class? Well, our elite drivers are denoted by what is yellow sashes on the timing tower, and also you'll see a yellow number boards and also what is dashes on their car. Meanwhile, if we do look to the pro class by comparison, it will be in blue, and in the AM class they will be in green. And as we do see Wallace making his way on through, we also do look to what is a fellow driver, and that is Tony Hobbs. And Tony Hobbs does join us in what is the pro class. He heads on through and around. In fact, a little bit of connectivity issues there. Hopefully we will see Tony materialise very shortly, but otherwise he might have made his way back to the pit lane, but hopefully we haven't lost him. And as we do look to some of our other drivers making the way on around, including Casper Brotner here, we see the old dudes in cars driving, indeed a fan favourite, and running around in the pro class. We also do have the new arrival of what is Joe Binder. In fact, we are just looking for Binder out on circuit. Here is the Ignium Motorsport driver competing in the AM class, the number 22 driver, signed to field the Porsche 911, and we look forward to seeing how he gets on. Indeed, Ignium Motorsport being represented in the elite class by Heckelgestad, and Pinder, they're getting it a bit wrong coming out to turn 12, carrying a bit too much speed, but he'll learn from that and look to recover when he goes in to qualifying. We also see Rob Armstrong joins the field in the pro class in the UKSimRacing Hunt Machine, the Mercedes AMG Evo, and well, the number 45 driver here, I think banking on the fact that this car's got a lot of power to deploy, particularly in the acceleration zones, and also its top end speed on the straights, but it will understeer a little bit in the medium to high speed corners, and it will have a knack for oversteer on power on corner exit, coming out of low speed corners such as the turn 13 hairpin. So it is going to be quite the beast to handle, but if anybody can do it, I think Armstrong's got the confidence that he can. We also do see a couple of other drivers further around the field, including what is Alvaro Moreno, as we do look for him out of circuit, but at the moment I think he is currently parked up in the pit lane, and there he is, in fact, the newcomer, the privateer in the number 59 car. Can we get a close-in shot as to what he's driving? I think he is in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, but we look forward to seeing how Alvaro gets on today, and well, he's definitely going to look to fly the banner high as he makes his way on around Jerez. And we also see David Flanagan, who joins us, albeit I believe that Flanagan may be in the pit lane at the moment. We are just trying to find him on circuit, but we can't quite find him at this time. And we also do have Mark Davidson, who, well, you can see there his lap time is listed as only a 22.1 second lap. We can assure you then that's a glitch in our time tab, because we are looking at an iRacing replay file, and well, his times are not quite valid. His best time has been a 1:39.83 so far. In fact, that's based on the times we've got. I think he's been a bit faster in the 36s and not the 37s. And the UKSimRacing Hunt driver takes to the field in the Porsche 911 GT3R. And good luck to him indeed to all of our newcomers who join us as of today. And I believe that is everybody covered, other than Flanagan, who's still in the pit lane and off circuit currently. But we will try to find him a little bit later on for you guys and girls. But as we see Davidson heading on around here, well, we look to Steinar Sani, as we can see here, the Norwegian in the racing lab, and one car coming on down towards where his turn at number 13. Only a minute to go in this final practice session as he heads on around and getting himself comfortably set here, and indeed time wearing on down in this final warm-up. as we do say hello there to Jeds. 70, good evening to you, Jeds. I hope you're doing well, and well, do let us know, ladies and gents, if you're cheering on any particular driver, or do let us know who you're cheering on and who you're expecting potentially to do well here today, as we also look to Øyvind Breivik as he makes his way on down through turn number 3 into 4. Through the long left he goes in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, soon to be replaced, of course, by the 296 in real life. And I wonder how long it'll be before we do see the 296 arrive in iRacing, albeit the Ferrari 488 Evo has been a very popular car in both simulated and real world motorsport, and it is a car that has found a lot of success. There's no question about it. As he makes his way down towards turn number 6, can Breivik find success today in the Pro Class? That will be the challenge, as we do then look to Billy Borray, as we can see losing the rear end slightly, the Scotsman for Empire Motorsport B, and well, that's not the way he'll want it to be going into qualifying, but pushing the limits there as Jonathan Hitchin also making his way on around in the Symphony Esports white machine, and well, with the Vodafone logo on the side there, he calls it into the corner, and it's time for us to make a call to transition over to qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back in approximately 1 to 2 minutes of qualifying. We just have to work a little bit of magic in the background, but when we do get back, we'll be heading into 30 minutes of qualifying action. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, qualifying gets underway. 30 minutes, and it's go, go, go as all our drivers make the way out to the pit lane. And well, as we do see Jacko Taylor heading out to the pits, and I do believe some of our drivers' liveries may have just glitched. We will get those refreshed very shortly. Well, in fact, he has been updated there, and you can see the liveries coming on through. What does it take to have a good qualifying lap here at the Jerez circuit? Well, it is all about carrying speed from corner to corner. We mentioned that earlier, but what does that mean exactly in practice? Well, there's 3 key elements to it. Firstly, you need to know how wide your car is and how much of the width of the circuit you can use in terms of where those track limits are, and being able to use the full width on entry, approach the apex, get 2 wheels on the apex curve if it feels comfortable to do so, and then on corner exit be able to put 2 wheels onto the exit curve, if not use more of it depending on the track limits on each corner. Doing that will mean that you exploit the full circuit width and therefore can carry as much potential speed. The next aspect is confidence. And by that we mean your confidence in being able to break into a corner and go late as possible, because the later the apex you target, the better in a GT3 machine. In the fact these front engine rear wheel drive and obviously these mid engine rear wheel drive cars, well, they want to try and get as much rotation on the corner apex, and if we're taking a later line and a late apex does normally enable you to achieve that. And it's not just about the confidence on the brakes, but it's also about when you hit the apex, starting to feather the throttle back in and return to full throttle as soon as possible, because the difference is if you're on 50% throttle at the apex versus at 60% throttle, that can translate into 1 to 2 miles an hour on corner exit, and on long straights such as coming out of turn 5 down towards turn 6. By the time you're breaking down to turn 6, that could increase to a deficit of what is 4 to 5 miles an hour if you don't quite get it right. The third aspect, we talked about circuit width, we talked about confidence. It's also about finding a bit of room out in this circuit, particularly when you've got such a cramped field around here. In the fact that if you do end up behind another driver, you're going to be feeling the dirty air coming off of their car, and therefore that dirty air is going to upset the aerodynamics of your machine, and you're going to be feeling the front end not want to cooperate as much, particularly understeer starts to creep on in, and that understeer on corner entry can cost you a lot of time. Indeed, from corner to corner it can cost you 2 to 3 attempts over the entirety of a lap, if not more. Of course, the offset is on a straight, you'll be picking up the toe, and therefore you'll gain a couple of miles an hour, but with the straights being quite limited around here, well, it's more likely you're going to be targeting a need for speed under your own momentum rather than trying to piggyback off of somebody else's slipstream. As the drivers are starting to make their way onto their first flying laps, of course, everybody getting themselves comfortably settled in right now, and it's going to be a long qualifying session for everyone, because most of our drivers are used to so far when it's a 10-minute qualifying session from last week. Indeed, they have as many laps as they so desire here today, and therefore we will see those lap times tumble on down as the circuit continues to be rubbered in. And as we do bring the weather up on screen on the right hand side, you can see there currently that 26 degrees centigrade ambient, and the track temperature's dropped to 39 degrees between the practice and with the qualifying session, but still it is going to be a warm track surface, and our drivers will be looking to push hard here. But after a couple of laps of pushing, they'll need to come into the pits and put on a new set of boots just for the simple reason the tyres are going to be absolutely brutalised by the qualifying performance. But as we do see, Darren Orkett making his way around for Racing Forces when the BMW M4, then the distinctive livery car. We do look to James Rankin making his way on through as well. And then on into turn at number 2 and into 3 very shortly. And another thing we should point out, ladies and gentlemen, that with regards to this being a post-round broadcast, if there is a major incident and we do happen to miss it on camera, unfortunately we can't quite get a replay of it because of the fact we are looking at an iRacing replay file. And speaking of a major incident, we did see there Philip Schwerker going on around, coming out of turn 3 in towards 4, and well, that's definitely a difficult one. He has to piece that back together as soon as he possibly can, but still he's only a tenth of the way into the qualifying session. He's got a lot of time available to him. But as our first lap times coming in, we do see Hekman Kristad in the rather notable Indian Motorsport livery there, and I think running gold on one side with the white on the other. Normally it's a mixture of white, black and blue, but they've decided to put some gold on the car, and perhaps it's a sign of how confident he's feeling in terms of he can go for the gold medal here today and take the win as he heads on down towards turn number 5 as he charges way down. In fact, to turn number 6 there, we get our numbers right eventually. Still more times coming in, and we will jump on board with some of our drivers very shortly to give you an on-board reference lap. And we should also point out that in terms of class changes for this round, well, we've only had one class change occur, and that is in the form of a driver being promoted from the AM class to the Pro class, and that is none other than Thomas Aspau, who has moved up to the Pro class. As he charges his way up towards turn number 1 here, he was the man on the pace and on a mission at the Red Bull Ring, and can he do that again today as he heads on around through turn 1 and into turn number 2? We're coming on through here in the Ferrari, and of course the Ferrari, a very sensible pick, particularly for drivers who are in the lower portion of their starting campaigns in a GT3 class. In the AM class, the Ferrari known to be quite a stable machine, albeit when you start to play with the setup you can make it quite an unstable machine. But the only downside of the Ferrari is it is very sensitive on those rear tyres, particularly in boiling hot conditions, and that's what we are going to see here. But still, Aspau deciding to go with the Ferrari, committed to the car, and as he makes his way down towards turn number 6, feeling comfortable in it. But meanwhile, as we look from him to some other drivers heading towards the end of their lap, including what is Daniel Pace. Well, Pace here in the AM class, deciding to go in the Mercedes MG Evo and heading up through very shortly, which is the run to turn number 13. We'll be jumping on board with him for our first reference lap of this qualifying session as he comes around, and we bring the dashboard up in the bottom right corner of your screen. He heads his way up towards the time line here to go on to another lap. Didn't improve on that one, but he's going to try and improve further now. Heads up the hill towards turn number 1, uphill braking zone here. You brake as late as possible and breaking the 100-meter board, coming down to second gear, clips the apex, gets back on the power, and now making his way into turn number 2. Keeps the car over to the left, rides the entry curve there, and then goes for a nice early apex, sensitive on the throttle, builds up the acceleration, and now heading through turn number 3. Flat out as he comes off the curb into turn number 4. There'll be a lift off the throttle as he makes his way through in 4th gear, collect the car back up, bring it over to the left-hand side, and here in turn number 5 you want to brake as late as you can and just wait for it, and then as soon as you feel the curb and the nose start to come together, back on the power immediately and charge your way out to turn 5 and down the hill towards turn number 6. Now in the long run on down at this point, making his way up towards the next braking zone and heading on to the brakes here, coming into turn number 6 now, down to second gear on corner apex, hitting 47 miles per hour at the corner apex and heading up towards the left-handers at turn 7 and 8 now. It's all about here, feathering the throttle through 7 and now going on to the brakes at turn number 8 from 4th gear, dropping his way down to 3rd and getting back on the power nice and a deceptively wide corner here as he heads into turn number 9, onto the brakes once again, down from 4th into second gear. Bit of an early apex there, that's going to cost him a bit of a run into turn number 10, but brings it back together, clips the apex curve. Got to be careful with the race sausage as he makes his way into 11, flying on through past the chicane, heading through the MotoGP layout. Now this is the differential and heading into turn number 12, flashing over the apex there and heading down towards 13, onto the brakes. The 100-meter wall coming all the way down the blocks to second gear. Will he drop to first? No, he decides to stay one gear out. That gives him stability on corner exit, slightly impeded there on the end of the lap. What's it going to be as he heads to the timeline here? Daniel Pace heading on through, and well, is it going to be a lap where he improves? He does to a 38.560. And as he parks it up, he decides it's not enough to have enough fuel in the car to go out there again. He's going to reset and go for another attempt. But as meanwhile we look to Darren Orkett making his way into turn number 1. A number of drives there parked up on corner exit. It definitely is a bit of a traffic jam right now. You can understand why. Everybody at the moment trying to steer clear of drivers who are going on to fast laps, looking at their relative deltas. And as we can see here, what is Simon Andre Lewiston making his way out to turn 3 and down towards 4. Well, he'll be getting himself set up as soon as possible. But meanwhile, we do look from him to what is Simon Hartley, as Hartley breaking his way on down there. That's into turn number 6 with what is, I do believe, Brandon Hay deciding to take a little bit of a visit wide in order to give space to drivers making their way on around. And speaking of Brandon Hay, we do say hello to Brandon Hay in the YouTube chat, also known as Hay, as he says, ready to watch me do my best impression of Bambi on ice in turn number 3. And indeed, that turn 3 very slippery. Having recently raced in the official iRacing GT Challenge Series around here, I can tell you that turns 2 and 3, they feel like you are on an ice rink going on through there. Indeed, this whole circuit in general does feel like it's very loose in terms of that track surface, but it's once you get in the rhythm around here, it is a circuit like no other when it comes to overall flow. And as we do see Hartley heading on through and up towards, what is turn number 13. We're yet to get a time on the board, and he'll be looking for a time this time around. And what's it going to be as he heads towards the timeline? Of course, the time to be in the AM class is held by Matt Maddox of 37.643, and will Hartley cross the timeline, and it's going to be a 39.169, and was a bit more time out there. And well, he'll be thinking about what else he can do as the session goes on, given the fact he's currently half a second off of John Doble's lap, and will Doble not too far further forward, albeit the pressure is on as our drivers make the way on around. But as Doble heads his way into what is turn number 3 and down through 4 very shortly, we do look from him to our fastest man out on circuit at the moment. And we should point out to you another limitation we do have here for the post-round broadcast is the lap times you see on the left-hand side. Those are the fastest times set by our drivers, which does seem a little bit obvious, but they do not account for potential track limit violations. So we could have a couple of lap times that are perhaps not 100% accurate and will not count towards the grid. So therefore, we will take all of the lap times as gospel or as truth until we do head to the grid. But you may see some drivers that move up and down the order accordingly. But Heckenstad right now on a 36.069. He's 1/10 faster than Jonathan Hitchin, albeit Hitchin immediately responds as soon as I say that by setting the first 35 of the session, a 35.971, and will Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo driver absolutely hammering it around here. And he's still got 20 minutes to go in this qualifying session, as we do say hello there to Jack Taylor and Greg Zenny in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you both, gentlemen. Hope you're doing well. But as we do see Hitchin heading out to turn number 4 and out towards 5, we do have a little bit of smoke being kicked up there. Somebody's locked up the brakes, it would seem, into turn number 5. Well, Hitchin carrying his way on through, and we're speaking of drivers carrying the way on around at the moment. Very shortly we'll have a couple of drivers heading onto another lap, including Carl McGurk as he makes his way onto a flying lap in the Mercedes AMG Evo, and we're currently in at P9 on 37.579 and parks up there on the entry curve. Got to be careful of that, in the fact he just brought it off circuit in time, but I think his peer behind him wasn't too impressed by that necessarily, and I think that was Nick Wren who just almost clipped the rear of him, as we see the Audi R8 LMS and GT3 driver making his way on down through 3 into 4 and coming through the left hand of their number 88 driver will just carry on his merry way now as he heads up towards turn number 5, and will currently 4 tenths off of the top 2. But to be fair, Wren putting in a very strong performance in this qualifying session so far. And meanwhile, we do look to what is a couple of other drivers heading on around, including, we can see here Thomas Aspal, as we see the pro driver making his way in towards turn number 5, but deciding to back off and let another driver or 2 on through, and they're not happy with the lap. In fact, retreats to the pit lane as we've got a driver around on the run into the apex of turn number 13. Not quite sure who that is, but meanwhile we see here this is John Eddowes making his way up the hill towards turn number 1, and well, of course, promoted to the elite class as of this season, and so far P11 in the elite class in this qualifying session, but very close to the top 10. McCormick only 6 thousandths faster. Indeed, it is very close there at the very top. To even get to the top 10 in the elite class, you've really got to be going some. But Eddowes here right now keeping his head down and thinking about what he can do in this qualifying session, indeed in the race. And when you're new to a class and you might not be on the pace of the very best of the class, you never know what can happen, particularly if drivers get it wrong when there's a big instant early on in the race, and he'll be thinking about, okay, it may be more about the race rather than this qualifying session. Just get himself as high as possible and then focus on what comes afterwards. But meanwhile, as he makes his way on down towards turn at number 6, we do have a little bit further on a round circuit the fellow TE Supersport driver of Martin Tilling, and we jump on board with him as he makes his way out to the final corner and onto a flying lap in the Porsche 911 GT3R. Then up towards turn at number 1, powering his way up the hill very shortly, heading up into 5th gear, and then on to the brakes here, just beyond the 100 metres. We're braking at 90 metres from corner apex down to 2nd gear. Plenty of rotation in the 911 as he makes his way towards turn number 2, and onto the brakes. He comes all the way down to 2nd gear, gets the car set up, and then makes his way out of 2, right on the curve of 3. Plenty of curve usage there as he now comes into turn 4. bringing the car towards the apex, up to 4th gear, completely committed on the throttle there, low fuel and going full attack as he now comes into turn number 5, goes for quite an aggressive approach there towards the apex at turn 5, decides to point the car in early, and well, in the mid-engine rear-wheel drive machine such as the Porsche, you can get away with that, and as he heads down from 5 into 6, bringing himself onto the brakes here for the sharp right-hand hairpin, coming all the way down to 2nd gear, doesn't drop to 1st, it looks like it's only going to be the final corner where we might see 1st gear action. As he heads up towards turn number 7, fully committed here, accelerates on through, flat out, well, getting ready to go onto the brakes here for turn number 8, points the car in once again, and very late on the brakes, an aggressive line from Tilling, a very smooth line that comes with it though as he makes his way into turn number 9, on the brakes, dropping down the 3rd, down to 2nd, right high the apex curve, lets the car flow out, goes for a very late apex there at turn number 10, just keeps her in track limits, and as he heads up towards turn number 11, well this is full on the limit here from Tilling, I can tell you that, as he comes through 11 into 12, through Ferrari corner he goes, up towards turn number 13, onto the brakes here, braking as late as he does, 80 metres a quarter apex, down to 2nd gear, absolutely points onto the apex curve, powering on out here, it's a very nice lap from Tilling. What's it going to be as he hits the line? Well, as he crosses the line, it looks like he's down his previous best, but to be fair, we'll have to wait and see in practice. It's a 36.700, it's not an improvement on his previous best at 36.57, but I can tell you one thing right now, if I didn't know he set a fast lap, well, I would have thought he would have improved massively, because that was an absolute flyer of a lap, and it goes to show you that Tilling right now, P4 in the elite class, is absolutely going for it, as meanwhile we do look to a newcomer to the series as of today, and that is Alvaro Marinero, as we can see him making his way on around here in the elite class, currently P5 in class, and well, 6.5 tenths off of the pole lap, and by comparison we're telling only half a tenth of a potential P4 in the elite class. He's still got half the qualifying session to go by the time he gets to the end of the lap he's gone on to, and with that in mind, he'll feel as though there's plenty of time to improve. He does improve there as he finishes the lap and goes on to the next one. He does move to P4 in the elite class, and it's now 36.435 as he makes his way into turn 2, and well, now the Lamborghini Huracan driver will think, okay, it's now a further attempt to Ren, who's in P3, but looking from him to the AM class. Meanwhile, we do have in a pole position Bruce car in the AM class, it's Sani, who is currently a tenth faster than Matt Maddox, and speaking of Maddox, here is your man as the Porsche driver makes his way on through turns 2 into 3. And it's very interesting to see here how they have quite an increased mixture in terms of the field of car. That car variety really now becoming prevalent in the fact that in the elite class we do have quite a concentration towards the Porsche 911 and also mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars in particular, but at the same time we've also got a couple of BMW M4s in there, including the Wallace and Edos, and we can see then when we go into the Pro class we really do have a lot of diversity, and the same in the AM class, and with that diversity of course we're going to see things mix up. Because while certain cars may be very fast over a single lap here, they may be quite the beast to control when we do go racing for 45 minutes. It's perhaps the slower cars that are more stable, such as the BMW M4, that will bode well for our drivers as Maddox makes his way through turn number 8, down towards 9, keeping it compact there on this out lap, and meanwhile looking from him to what is John Doble, or fellow Porsche driver here as he heads on through, and at the moment caught up behind a couple of drivers and also some drivers behind him and trying to find some breathing room. And indeed, as you look at that circuit map on the top right corner of your screen, you'll notice just how crowded it is around this circuit. Indeed, all our drivers trying to figure out the space they need in order to be able to set those perfect laps. So I think with Doble making his way down towards turn number 6 at the moment, giving himself some breathing room from the Mercedes in front of him, it may just start to work out for him. And speaking of that Mercedes drivers, we do look to Rob Armstrong, still P15 in the Pro class, 2.9 seconds off of the pole lap, and looking for time, it's Billy Bob Ray, who is your provisional pole sitter in the Pro class by 2.5 tenths. And well, as we look to the overall standings and see how all the drivers mesh together, you can see in the top half of the timing tower, that's your top 28, and it's a top 4 of pros, and then P5 right now, it is your pro provisional pole sitter of Billy Bob Ray ahead of Tilling, and it's Aspal, who is P7. It is very close between them in the fact they're only separated by 2.5 tenths, and they do have quite the gap to their peers in the remainder of the Pro class, with Peter Cox there P12, and then our AM pole sitter so far of Steinar Sani in P15, and he has got 6 places between himself and Matt Maddox, and Sani right now feeling very comfortable, as meanwhile we have a new overall provisional pole sitter and in the elite class, and that is Nick Wren, as Wren sets a 35.941. He parks up immediately there on corner exit. I think he feels as though now it's this man to have to respond, Hekun Gustad, as he makes his way into turn number 2. We'll Gustad will look at the gauntlet that's been laid down and think, right, it's only 19 thousandths, it's only just shy of 200ths of a second. When I say it's only, but of course that would be absolutely understating the fact that every thousandth at this level of competition is absolutely pivotal. And as Gustad makes his way on around through turn number 5 down towards 6, well, he does have the Audi R8 steering clear there, and he'll be grateful for the fact he does not have anybody in front of him in close proximity. But of course he'll be ruining the fact that he has lost a little bit of slipstream coming out of 5 into 6, and that's the one extended straight where the slipstream may help you, albeit then you have to try and clear the drive before you get into the turn 6 hairpin and make your way through the complex that dominates in the second half of the lap through turn 7 through to 11. But as he comes on through turn number 8 right now, Gustad flying on through very gradually here. His last lap an improvement to a 30 at 5.96. And what else can he do on this lap as he heads towards the end of this second third of the qualifying session? Only 11.5 minutes remaining now. And time is beginning to trickle down a little bit, albeit the pressure is not necessarily being felt. And as he heads down into turn number 12, into 13, he'll very shortly be thinking if it's not going to come on this lap, he's going to have to tighten it up, given the fact that only 100th behind him is Jonathan Hitchin. And, well, the Symphony Esports driver will be looking to try and get it back on pole for the simple reason he'll want to get as many points as possible here today to right the wrongs of the Red Bull Ring. But as we do see Gustad cross the line there, he goes a little bit faster, but it's not enough. It's 7 thousandths off. Hitchin, meanwhile, coming to the timeline. And what's he going to be able to do here? Well, he's on an outlap, going on to a flyer, and we jump on board with Hitchin as he heads into turn number 1. Going on through the right hand, they're absolutely attacking the corner and breaking his way into turn number 2. And what's very noticeable here now is he's using all the width of the circuit, all the way up to its very limited edge threshold in terms of where those track limits are. And as he makes his way through 3 into 4, I mean, this is going to be the female lap now. It is going to be do or die, but speaking of that, he gets it wrong, and the car into the barrier as he comes out of turn number 4, just gets a little bit greedy with the throttle pedal and makes his way back into the pit lane. For Jonathan Hitchin, it's going to be a reset and go again. But how long has he got left? As meanwhile we do look to Martin Tilling as he heads on through turn number 13, runs wide there, and everybody now really starting to push hard. I think we're starting to see where the errors could start to creep into this qualifying session. We've got 10 minutes remaining, drivers still plenty out of the circuit, and well, at the moment in the elite class, the battle for pole position is between Ren, Gustad and Hitchin, with the top 3 separated by only 300ths of a second. And then in the pro class, it's Billy Bob Ray, who in P1 at the moment in the class, he's 1/10 faster than Aspal, but the gap between them and the rest of the field is a further 6/10 to Peter Cox. And then in the AM class, it is currently Steiner Sani, who is on pole position by just shy of a 10th over Matt Maddox, and the battle for AM pole then carries on for a further attempt to Mark Johnson before you have 3 attempts to Daniel Pay. So in all 3 classes, we do effectively have either a top 2 or a top 3 that are very close together, and then the rest of the field is bunched up behind by a significant gap between them. But as we do see right now, when Sonny head on down towards turn number 6, he'll be thinking about the fact he cannot let off the gas for a single second. In this moment, it could be Matt Maddox who finds a way to improve it, albeit Maddox is in the pit lane. I think Maddox taking a breather before he goes out one final time. As Sonny heads on through turn at number 8 and up towards 9, he charges. The number 78 driver here will feel as though it's on Maddox to improve now rather than himself. But he'll try and find a little bit more time. And speaking of improvements, well, meanwhile we do look to P26 overall, P13 in the elite class. He's gone purple in sector 1 and he improves at the end of this lap. He moves to P4. That is Philip Schwerker as he crosses the timeline. Meanwhile, Brandon Hay in the pro class heading on through at turn turn number 7 into 8, and coming through the long left-hander turn 8 down towards 9 he goes. And will the BMW M4 driver here, I think, looking to try and just find a little bit of a calmer race. He definitely was in the thick of it at the Red Bull Ring in terms of instance being around him and also being in those close battles. Back off there and lets other drivers on through, and will understandably so because he is on an out lap. As we can see there, well, the TE SimSport machines, I believe that's Tilling coming on through, or Edo's one of the two, both running near similar liveries, albeit the door numbers are different. But as Hay heads up towards turn number 13, onto the brakes he goes, and well, he'll be heading onto a lap very shortly, and we jump on board the BMW M4 driver as he takes us around for a flying lap of the Jerez circuit. Making his way out to the final corner and up towards turn at number 1, building his way up through the gearbox here, up into 5th gear, or well, he goes to 5th gear, but then goes onto the brakes and comes all the way down to 2nd, uses plenty of apex curve there. I'm amazed we didn't see the right side go onto the grass, but as he comes into turn number 2, that's how fine he's going to try and cut it here, trying to get as much apex to give him as much rotation as he possibly can grab. And coming on through 3, up into 4 now, going through the long left-hander. A little bit of a lift here. Hasn't quite got the confidence in the car to attack it flat out. But again, trying to play for a strong and stable approach. As he comes through turn at number 5 through the long right. Gets a very early apex. This is going to cost a huge amount of the line. And you can see there, just dipping the front right tyre onto the grass. It unsettled the car as he tried to build the throttle up. And it's not been a clean start to lap for Hay. But perhaps it'll be in the second half of lap where he does improve. As he breaks his way down into the turn 6 hairpin. Gets a nice approach to the apex there. Really brings the car comfortably on around. Uses plenty of exit curve. And now heading into turn 7 and 8. It's going to be flat out here as he upshifts to 4th gear. Just a little bit early there to help get the rotation in. As he comes into turn number 8 onto the brake. Straight lines in under brake. And we can see that's Norquette parked off circuit on the apex. And as he comes out of 8 now into turn number 9 onto the brakes once more. He's improved in subsector 2. So this lap is really starting to come together as he comes into turn number 10. A bit of an early approach there. But again, the approach to the curb for the BMW is one where it's not too bothered by attacking apex curves too high, but as he comes through 11, clips the grass on the apex a bit too soon, unsettles the car as he comes through 12, and making his way into turn number 13. It's not been a perfect lap here, but as he comes on through the left-hander at turn 13, the privateer from Newbridge Esports, we're looking to improve a little bit more, where he has improved in subsectors 2 and 3 compared to his relative bears, and as he comes to the timeline, what's it going to be? Well, it's enough for P6 down to 137.488. I think he'll feel as though he's got at least another 10th in the car, because right now a 10th would put him up into P4 in the Pro Class, ahead of Darren Sharples and also Matt Strand. But as he makes his way on ground, he'll know where he lost the time. He lost it at turn 5, he also lost it slightly at turns 10 through to 12, and that's where he can pick up the pace as he comes on through. As we say hello there to Skylar Lahan, who's cheering on John Eddowes in the YouTube chat. And as we do look back to our pictures, we can see Richard Jones making his way out of the pit lane, and well, now he parks himself up, and I think just aware of the fact drivers are coming on through, and this is a horrible place as we see James Connolly making his way on around, in the fact that now when time is running out and you want to get out there and put a lap in, you've got to be mindful of the fact that everybody's crowding onto the circuit as Mark Johnson takes the provisional pole in the AM class on a 37.538. He's only 100th faster than Sani, with Maddox a 10th behind, and well, the battle for the AM pole position is definitely heating up, but it's not just about them as we can see here. Connolly heading on around right now, and if he finds himself just simply at 9,000, he'll be on equal pace for Peterson versus Deanster as he heads on through. Well, meanwhile, Pinder moves up to P9 on a 38.911. Hartley behind him in P10 now, as Raldridge has yet to get a lap on the board, and the same for David Flanagan, who has yet to take to the circuit. Potential technical issues for Flanagan today. And meanwhile, we can see there on the elite class time in town, it's out laps of the top 3. They're all going to give it one last shot as we continue to focus on Conley making his way on around, and indeed the number 46 driver thinking there could be a little bit more to be delivered as he comes on through the right-hander. Oh, but what is there? Excuse me, at turn number 9 into 10, through the long right he goes. It gets plenty of apex curve there, but not much of the exit curve being used. And I think Conley just losing out a 10th or 2 on the exit of 10, gets it hooked up for 11, but runs a bit wide on corner exit, and that is going to validate the lap and cost him a lot of time as he makes his way down to turn number 13. Conley really pushing hard now. Try and find the lap time. I think the lap time may be going a little bit aloof as he heads to the timeline here. And what's it going to be as he crosses? I think he'll need to get another lap, and he's currently P8. Indeed, that lap not improving, and he's now only got what is effectively another 3 laps to go if he's got the fuel for it and he can find the space. But meanwhile, we look from him to what is our driver in P4 overall and in the elite class, and that is Philipp Schwerker, as we can see the privateer from Germany making his way in the Porsche on down through what is turn number 9 into 10, having an Audi move out the way there for him. Perfect timing, and as he comes towards the end of the lap, he'll be thinking about what can be on this lap and what can be on the next lap. He is the fastest of everybody in sector 1, really setting the time in Tower of Light with a 25.23. It's elsewhere on the lap where he's matching his previous best, so this could be a lap that puts him a little bit closer to the top 3. He is currently just over a 10th off, but as he heads to the timeline, what's it going to be this time around with 3 minutes left to go? Until he improves to P5 with 36.293. Philipp Schwerker goes provisional pole on a 35.705. It's a phenomenal lap, and he immediately goes back to the pits. I think he recognises there's still time out there as Nick Wren improves to 35.868. It's 1.5 tenths off, however. This qualifying session now, if it wasn't already alive, it's becoming extremely alive at the end. It's almost ascending to heaven at this point in terms of how intense it is, and the fact that all the drivers are out on circuit. We have got 38 cars out on circuit right now. I kid you not, ladies and gentlemen, it is deafening in my right ear as I try to make the way on around. And well, as we can see, Ren heading on through turn number 5, through the right-hander and down towards turn 6 he goes. Well, he's got the draft there of the BMW in front. We're not quite sure who that is, but he parks it up and decides it's not enough on that lap. Meanwhile, Peter Cox heading on around here, the UKSimRacing driver in the 68 BMW in the Pro Class. No, he's got to try and find some time if he wants an opportunity to battle for the top 2 in the Pro Class in this qualifying session. Comes on into the final corner here, and well, he is 1.5 tenths clear of Hobbs, so I think you'll feel safe there from Tony Hobbs by comparison. But as Cox heads to the line this time around, does he find any improvement? No, he does not. Meanwhile, we look to Tony Hobbs, and Tony Hobbs making his debut here today, of course, and welcome to him in the number 5 car as he makes his way on around. And we're currently putting in quite a stellar performance. But meanwhile, speaking of stellar performances here, he's gone purple in class in sectors 1 and 3. He comes to the line, and Billy Bob Ray, it's a 36.677. He improves by 2.5 tenths to further the pole lap for the Pro Class to a 36.408, and that's good enough right now for P7 on the overall grid as he makes his way on through. And indeed, as we look to those overall standings briefly, this is how the top 35 currently line up on the grid, all intermingled together across the classes. It's a top 6 of Elite, and then it's a Pro, followed by the Elite of Marinero as they make their way on around here in the concluding minutes now. And then it's going to be Aspal P9 and Davidson P10 as things finish as they stand. And meanwhile, Johnson P21 there, your Ampole sitter, only what is 11 thousandths faster than Sani in the battle for Ampole. They're P21, P22 currently. But as we look back to the class standings here, keeping everything nice and tight now are our drivers. We do have a good number of drivers who decide to make the way into the pit lane. And I think for them it's all now about simply parking up, biting nails and hoping that their lap's been good enough, particularly in the AM class. The majority of the AM class is in the pits. We've only got a couple now out there trying to put in that very last lap. And well, as we do see Matt Strand heading on through wins their turn at number 7 into 8. He'll be thinking about what he can achieve now with that time remaining in the Pro Class. He is currently only 300ths over the time of Darren Fellows, and well, if he can find the time there, that'll give him a good jump up the order, given the fact that Hobbs is a further 3 tenths up the road in terms of time. But as we continue to watch Strand hanging through turn number 10, goes a little bit deep on corner exit, but just about carries it back together, and that's the fast flowing run through what is turn at number 11 into 12 to sweeps the car on through, heads up towards turn number 13. Billy Bob Ray improves even further in the Pro Class to a 36.125, and the clock strikes 30 minutes here. And will we get overtime, ladies and gentlemen? I think we may. As we can see here, Strand heading towards the timeline. He gets the lap done, but is it enough to improve from P6 in the Pro Class? No, it's not. Meanwhile, further drives out of the circuit at the moment do include what is Casper Brotner, as we see Brotner taking a bit of a wide line coming out to turn at number 10 into 11. He'll be P9 in the Pro Class. That's the best he'll be able to achieve. And then we have Tilling, who's jumped up to P5 in the Elite Class. He crosses the timeline, but meanwhile, there's more drives out there. In fact, that's Edo's making his way back to the pit lane. Matt Strand as well making his way in. Casper Brotner heading through the final corner, and well, he's left it quite late here. He's improved in sector 1. Will he be able to find the time at the end of the lap, given the fact he didn't improve in sectors 2 or 3? Well, he's currently a 10th off of Hayes' time in P8 in the Pro Class, and in the end, Brotner only qualifies P9 there in the Pro Class. As meanwhile, we've only now got 4 drivers yet to finish their laps, including what is Mark Johnson, your AM pole sitter, and he will be on pole in the AM class, subject to confirmation whether his lap is valid as we transition to the grid. And well, with that 37.538, only 100th faster than Sani, the gap absolutely minuscule, and Johnson, I think, recognised he's done enough. He doesn't need to finish this lap. Meanwhile, Nathan Foster for Empire Motorsport making his way into the final corner, and well, as the number 52 Porsche makes its way out of the corner, will he be able to improve from P9 on the Elite grid? We're going to see here as he comes to line, improved in sector 3, but is it enough to find the time? He does improve it to P8 there. He gains 3 tenths. It's a 36.504, but it's only 1 place gained over Davidson. Meanwhile, we've also got the driver of what is Hekon Gestad, hence a line, but he's decided to park up. That's his day done in qualifying. He'll be starting in P3. So in the Elite class and overall, it'll be Philip Schwerker on pole. In the Pro class, it'll be Billy Bob Ray, who starts P6 on the overall grid. And in the AM class, it's Mark Johnson who takes pole, P21 overall, as Foster makes his way now to park up. And all the drivers will be parked up in the pits. And with that in mind, it has been a qualifying session to remember, but I'm sure it's going to be ever more a race to remember, as now we are only moments away from transitioning over to the grid for our race of today. As we do see there, our flagman waving furiously, Barney Flag, putting in all the effort he does as always there to signal to our drivers. We transition into the gridding for the purposes of our one and only sprint race here at Jerez. This is how they line up then for our racer today. And we can see in round 2 of the GT3 League Season 10, brought to you by UKSimRacing, it is Philip Schwerker who takes pole position in the elite class, joined by Nick Rem for Tiki Simsport Corporate on the front row. It's then Hekon Gustad who starts P3 on the second row for Ignium Motorsport, joined by Tiki Simsport Corporate's Martin Tillim. On the third row of the grid, it's your pro pole sitter of Empire Motorsport B's Billy Bob Ray, joined by Tiki Simsport's Jacko Taylor. Watch out for him, of course, flying into the braking zones, much like at the Red Bull Ring, no doubt. And then on row number 4, it's Jonathan Hitchin for Symphony Esports White, joined by Alvaro Marinero in P8. On the 5th row of the grid, completing the top 10, it's the elite and pro pair of Nathan Foster for Empire Motorsport B, joined by Thomas Aspau for Racing Lab AM, with row 6 going to Mark Davison for UKSimRacing Hunt, joined by Tiki Simsport Kimmy's John Eddowes. On row number 7, meanwhile, we do have the pairing of what is Tony Hobbs, the privateer, and Peter Cox from UKSimRacing Moss, followed up on row number 8 by Travis Wallace for Tiki Simsport Tower and Darren Fellows for BDM Racing. Then on row at number 9, it will be Darren Orkett for Racing Forces, who's followed up by Darren Sharples, and then completing the top 20 on row 10, it's Matt Strand for Racing Lab AM, joined by the privateer of Brandon Hay. Then on row at number 11, it's the AM pole sitter of Mark Johnson, who takes P21 for UKSimRacing Moss, and he is joined in good company by fellow AM driver Racing Lab AM1's Steiner Sani, who starts P22. Carl McGurk starts P23 on the 12th row of the grid for Racing Forces, joined by Old Dudes in Cars at Casper Rotner, and as we make our way to the 13th row of the grid, it's Matt Maddox for BDM Racing, joined by Racing Lab AM1's Seaman Andre Livingston. On row 14, it's the pair of Richard Jones and CHR Motorsports Paul Robson, and on row 15, it's Oyvind Breivik and Daniel Pays, who complete the top 30 for Racing Lab AM and Old Dudes in Cars. John Doyle for Tiki Simsport Kimmy and CHR Motorsports James Rankin are on row number 16, with Rob Armstrong for UKSimRacing Hunt lining up P33 on the 17th row, joined by Tiki Simsport Corpus Satinder Deenster, and then we have James Conley starting P35 on the 18th row, joined by Ollie Pimley, followed up on row 19 by Simon Hartley for Tiki Simsport Tar and Ignium Motorsports Joe Pinder, and it's David Flanagan and John Rulwich on the final row of the grid. The Privateer and Revolution Sim Racing drive both not getting a lap in and looking to try and find the pace out on circuit in the race. As we now do look down to the closer cameras, we're almost set to go racing here, ladies and gentlemen. It's a short formation lap, and as we do see Philip Schwerker leading our drivers around behind the safety car, well, we are only moments away from going green. We'll place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Who is it going to be who takes the win? Schwerker will be looking to try and take a win today after being denied it, of course, last week at the Red Bull Ring. But watch out for Ren, who starts alongside him. Tiki Simsport driver absolutely flying in qualifying, and Gristad as well in P3. He'll be looking to get a nice early launch as they make their way down towards turn number 13, and now we wait for Schwerker to take our drivers away. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 2 of the GT3 League Season 10. And Schwerker absolutely nails the start and causes the field to bunch up behind. And into turn number 1, it's going to be Schwerker ahead of Ren with Gristad tucking in. And as they make their way through turn 1 into turn 2, we can see the field already starting to jostle with Jacko Taylor up the inside there. Oh, what is Martin Tilly? In fact, he goes all in and gets the move done nice and early. And as our drivers make their way down through turn 2 into 3, we can see further Billy Bob Ray and Tilly fighting with Hitchin also creeping into the mix, as Hitchin falling back a little bit further as they come on through when it's turn at number 4 up into 5. But everybody so far surviving opening laps. Albeit we've got a car off in the rear of the picture, and that's Brandon Hay, who's got it very, very wrong. We briefly saw a snippet in the rear of the camera shot, and you can see them there turning around off in the distance. But meanwhile, as the majority of the field makes its way up through turn number 5 and down towards 6, it's all battles of plenty between Matt Maddox and Casper Brotner. Albeit as Carl McGuire also gets into the fight here, it's going to be a break on down, and we're going to see Brotner in particular on the outside here versus Wins McGurk on the inside into turn number 6. This is the battle points between them. P22 on circuit in different classes, and Casper Brotner holds the position currently as they make the way through turn 7 into 8. And meanwhile, a little bit further up the road, Billy Bob Ray, well, your pro pole sitter currently under pressure from Thomas Aspau. Albeit between the two of them, we do have Nathan Foster as they make the way through turns 9 and 10 and up towards turn number 11. But charging away on around and down towards the end of the lap right now. There is a little bit of calm before the storm of further battles. We're in Ollie Pimley and James Conley both been involved in an incident. accident, and well, Brendan Hay meanwhile has had to be towed to the pit lane after his excursion at turn number 3. But meanwhile, as we look to the front of the field after one lap, it's Felix Schwerker who leads by 7/10 over Nick Wren as they make the way onto lap number 2, followed by Heckel Gestad P3, and next Jacko Taylor P4, Martin Tilling P5, followed by Jonathan Hitchin P6, Alvaro Marinho P7, then Billy Will Gray P8, Nathan Costa P9, and Thomas Aspal P10 there, and best of the rest Mark Davidson in P11 as he follows on through. Meanwhile, we can tell in the battle for the AM lead, it is currently Mark Johnson who's still leading, but as they make the way on down here, meanwhile it's a bold move on the inside by Travis Wallace, up the inside of Tiki Sims-Mokhtar on Tony Hobbs, and Hobbs responds here as they make the way out of 3 into 4, coming through the long left hand, they both go, and well, who's going to be the one to back out here? I think it is going to be Wallace, who runs incredibly wide, but he carries the speed into 5, and Hobbs there finds himself frustrated. And as he flounders his way through turn number 5, I think he's going to have to back out of this one. Meanwhile, Johnson versus, well, it's Sani here for the lead of the AM class as they make the way side by side down. It's Johnson on the right of your picture for UKSimRacing Miles. Sani on the inside of Racing Bam, and onto the brakes they go. And Johnson with a better brake in there gets the job done as he comes up through the corner, or does he? As they exit on out, it's not quite done yet. They're 2 wide coming into turn number 7 here, and it's only 3 minutes into this race. And Sani backs off slightly, but look at this, Casper Ronner up the inside as well. He's trying to break on through, and with it, it's Carl McGurk who catches up as well. Johnson goes deep, and with him going deep right now, he's got to be careful here. As McGurk looks to go around the outside, Johnson defends hard here on the inside. He does not want to be forced back towards Sani, but Sani goes round, and Jones comes on through, and Steiner Sani gets it wrong coming through turn number 10, and the car points the wrong way, reset to the right way, but it's too late, and Mark Johnson survives a scary moment. They're battling for the lead of the AM class, and well, meanwhile, whilst all this is going on, further behind we can see Ivan Breivik here making his way through turn at number 11 in towards 12, and he's under pressure from John Doble behind, as Breivik right now in the pro class trying to keep the AM at bay. He's got Deemster in front of him running in at P4 in the AM class, and Breivik just wanted to pick his way on through. But as they make the way up the hill towards turn number 1 once again, there's definitely a number of drivers who've been bruised and battered a little bit in this race so far. Meanwhile, Matt Maddox here trying to chase afterwards Rob Armstrong, the VDM Racing driver, trying to put pressure on at versus the UKSimRacing Mercedes. I think Maddox will be more conscious of the fact he's got Hartley close behind as they head on down towards turn at number 2 once again. They're coming on through the right hander, the number 20 car here, definitely right now making a little bit of headway, albeit he's got plenty more to come before this race is done. And I say that, he goes a bit wide, and as he does, he rejoins, and Hartley comes on through to take P7 in the AM class, as right now he's got Raldridge just behind as well. But as we can see Raldridge there flashing his lights, trying to distract his opponent, Maddox not playing ball to that, instead keeping his head down. But meanwhile, as we look back up to the front of the field, we look to our P2 driver here of Nick Wren from Team Sport Corp, battling for P2 in the elite and the overall categories versus Heckel Gestad. And as we jump on board the gearbox here, Gestad very close, and you can see the difference in body language here of the two cars. The Audi very strong from the medium speed corners, but the Porsche by comparison, the ultimate corner champion. As they make the way into turn number 11, the Porsche able to carry so much speed in the low speed apex, so they make the way through turn 12 and up towards turn number 13 they go. And will Gestad here will be mindful of the fact that he doesn't necessarily need to make the move on circuit to make this count. All he sometimes needs to do is just put the pressure on, fuel save in the meantime. But then again, given the fact that Schwerker right now has a 1 second gap, can he really afford to back off the wick? As they make the way into another lap, and Schwerker sets the fastest lap of the race so far of 36.443, and it's continuing to push on. But as we see Ren go a little bit deep, it's going to be Gestad who looks to move on the inside here, coming into turn number 2. He goes all in, and the Tiki Sport Corporate driver gives the new Motorsport driver the space to play with, and Gestad moves up to P2 in a beautiful move into turn 2. And well, as the two make the way now up towards turn number 5, it's Jacko Taylor a bit further behind here, who continues to keep watch, but he's got Martin Tilling fast approaching as they make the way into the long right-hander. Further down the field, we can see Jonathan Hitchin here in P6, and well, Hitchin after a slow start starting to gain a little bit of ground now. He's on the back of Tilling as they come out of 5 down towards 6, and well, he's going to be in the tone. The Lamborghini no slouch in terms of acceleration versus the Porsche as they make the way into the brakes. Hitchin looks for it, but again, I think they're trying to expect that Tilling would open the door, and for Hitchin to lunge from that far back, we'd definitely be licking the stamp and sending it. I think they're just trying to intimidate a potential move rather than go fully in, and as they come through turn 7, 8, it's having the right effect in the fact that Tilling slightly offline coming through 6 into 7, and Hitchin goes a little bit deep there. The dirty air washing out the front end of the car as they make the way into 9, 10. still close together and coming on through at turn number 10 right now. You can just see how Hitchin's so frustrated, I think, in that dirty air of Tilling's car and just not able to carry all the speed. But in these low-speed apex corners where he's just not comfortable about getting the rotation on the car, medium to high speed, it seems to be there. But as soon as it's a low-speed corner down in second gear, that's where the car just seems to fade away. And in fact, Marinero has closed up close behind in P7 there as the debutant really putting the pressure on as they make the way onwards towards turn number 1. But as they come on through, meanwhile we look back, it's Carl McGurk, the elite driver, who tries to look for the place to pass on Matt Strand in the battle for what is between them, P20 overall. And as they come on through with Strand in the pro class, McGurk in the elite class, and the difference between the two of them right now is only a couple of attempts as they head up the hill into the rise for turn number 1. But onto the brakes they go, and meanwhile further behind, Joe Pinder still trying to make a bit of ground as he makes his way up the hill in P6 in the AM class. His next target is the fellow AM driver of John Doble. Onto the brakes here, the two Porsche drivers equally matched so far, albeit Doble going a little bit deep out of 1 into 2. But when you're in equal machinery, it comes down to the setup you're running and also the driver and how much you exploit the setup. And some drivers, of course, will go for a particular setup that suits their driving style, not necessarily the circuit. Around here, you do want a bit of downforce for the medium speed corners. It is a relatively high downforce circuit, Jerez typically, but some drivers may be banking on the fact taking a little bit of rear wing off for the simple reason it gives them the speed on the extended straights, and we do have the 2 extended straights of them all. But as the Ignium Motorsport driver here, Joe Pinder, watches on behind Doble, he's also got Rob Armstrong to contend with as the pro driver also tries to get a little bit closer. But meanwhile, looking a bit further back, we have Steiner Sani looking up the inside of Ollie Pimley, and will Sani trying to make a recovery drive here after that mistake, coming through turn at number 9 into 10 when he was bound for the lead of the AM class. He's in P9 in AM class. He picks up the overall position of P35 off of Pimley, and he's still got a long way to go, but thankfully he's got a lot of time left in this race and he's not going to give up any time soon. But as we do see him making his way through turn number 8 up towards 9 and 10 now, we look from here back up towards what is the elite battle here for P4 and back between Taylor, Tillin, Hitchin, Marino, and also Nathan Foster and Billy Bob Gray as they all try to creep into this battle. And will Taylor at the head of it right now, and the 115 driver, well, I think the Team Sport driver will be mindful of the fact that his key objective here really will be, if he can't catch up to Ren, act as a little bit of a roadblock for his fellow Tiki Simsport driver as they come down the hill for turn 3 into 4 and heading onwards here. You can see how the field starting to bunch up behind as they head up towards turn at number 5. But Hitchin getting close, and again Hitchin finding the same frustrations of the past, which is he can get extremely close to this opening sequence. In fact, Hitchin sector times right now, sector 1 in that opening sequence of corners. He's one of the fastest drivers on the circuit, but this is where it starts to unfold negatively as he looks at the move again versus Tillin, but he can't find it and has to wait and watch as they come through turn number 6. But again, on apex there, where Tillin would be expected perhaps to be a little bit faster off the corner, it's Hitchin who's faster. But now as we start to really bring the average lap speed down in the second half of the lap, this is where the Civic East One's white drive is just slightly uncomposed in terms of that front end, just not inspiring. Again, look at the understeer that just creeps in off of the apex of turn number 8. It looks like the car's going to go to the gravel, and in the end he just has to feather it off slightly in order to make sure it stays on circuit, and that's what's costing him the time. But as we look from him back to Travis Wallace, this is the battle for what is P11 through to P10 in the elite class, albeit right now we do have what is there Darren Fellows ahead of him, and this is for overall position. In fact, as we correct ourselves in the battle for P14, Wallace the elite driver trying to pick his way past Fellows, and as he makes his way around, he'll be conscious of the fact that he's got Hobbs and more importantly Darryl Norquette behind him, only by 1.5 seconds. And you can see the Racing Forces driver there coming on through turn number 13, and Hobbs between the two of them right now. And it definitely does look as though the elite's been spread out by the pros at this point in the race, and well, they'll be mindful of the fact they might need to use a little bit of strategic mastery in order to jump through. And well, that has been going into the pits early rather than later, going for the undercut. But of course the undercut does have the gamble. In fact, if you come out into traffic, alternatively you don't put the right amount of fuel in, it can lead to your demise later in the race when you lose place and lose overall race time. But as we do look from the battle that's starting to build a bit further down the order, back up to the rear of Jacko Taylor. In fact, looking at P4 backwards here, and we ride on board the gearbox of Jacko Taylor's car. You can see it heading up towards turn number 6 once again, and Tilling here 4 attempts away, and T Simsport drivers really working it hard as we do see their logo on the front of the Porsche behind as they make their way in towards turn at number 7. Well, what can they do here on strategy? That'll be the thing they'll start to think about. Well, Ren is being bought a little bit of time here in P3 by the gap opening up little by little now to 1.8 seconds as he makes his way into turn at number 9. Onto the brakes they go, and Hitchin getting very close as he comes on through turn at number 9 into 10. I think Hitchin at this point, his bubbles fuel's going to start to burst, and with that he'll just want to get a move on as we jump aboard with the Symphony Esports white driver. And again, notice how that gap opens up to half a second coming out to 10, but this is where now Hitchin will start to bear his fangs and really go on the hunt onto the brakes into turn 13, coming down the gearbox as aggressively as he can without lifting the rear of the car up under braking. As he makes his way out of one, the gap is now 6.5 tenths. Those low speed corners really just not the forte of the Lamborghini Huracan as he makes his way up towards turn number 1. Then into the braking zone here, and this is the sector where Hitchin just seems to be in a world of his own. Takes a whole temp out just in the opening corner, but then a little bit of wheel spin coming off of the apex actually costing him time there. Perhaps Hitchin's pushing a bit too hard at the moment, just needs to cool the tyres down. In the fact we are now into the 12th minute of this race, almost into minute 13, and with that those tyre pressures will be coming up and tyre temperatures with it, and therefore for Hitchin it's now going to be, I think, a question of strategy that can enable him to jump inside the top 5 rather than trying to make a move happen. But as we look from him to a little bit further down the order, we look back to Mark Johnson. Your AM leader at this time is now chasing afterwards Richard Jones, who is in the Pro class, and as we do see Johnson carrying on through behind him, that is Daniel Page, so you can see in the old Dudes in Cars machine, and well, he's taken P2 ahead of that Livingston as he comes on through in turn, and wins their turn at number 5 into 6, and the number 8 driver here, he's got Paul Robson behind. I think he'll feel very comfortable as we see Robson and Rankin together, and the 2 CHR Motorsport cars in formation as they make their way down into turn at number 6, and then we do have the the Racing Lam AM cars of what is Andre Livingston and also Brevik just behind. And Simon Andre Livingston in particular right now feeling comfortable, I think, in that P3 in the AM class, but conscious that he may be able to gain a little bit more time versus what is Daniel Pace. In fact, on that last lap he did take 6 tenths out of pace, so perhaps the time is coming. He's just starting to creep his way into this race little by little. But as the race goes on, we can tell you in terms of retirements we've had so far, David Flanagan wasn't able to make it to the grid, unfortunately, so the 40 starters, albeit 39 made the way off the line, and we've also had the retirement of the privateer from Newbridge Esports of Brandon Hay after that opening lap instant at turn 3. But as we look to Livingston making his way through 12 into 13, we still do have 38 out of our 40 starters on circuit, and as you can see on the circuit map on the top right corner of your screen, we are starting to get some gaps to appear in terms of our drivers out of the field, particularly the elite class and the top echelon of the pro class starting to gap the AMs and the lower echelon of the pro class, and we could potentially see some drivers start to think about gambling on an undercut stop by pitting within the opening 20 minutes. And to be fair, we've seen it happen and work out a number of times before, particularly in Season 9 there were some occasions where it really worked out a treat, but it's about finding the right time to do it. As Jones loses the rear of the cars, we cut over to the driver who was in P8 in the pro class. We're still going to be in P8 in the pro class, coming out of what was there, I do believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, we briefly lose Jones for a moment. Now it's coming out to turn 4 into 5, but in the end, finding the one, the number 99 Mercedes definitely impacted for it as he now brings it back together, but he does have Robson closing gradually, and here is the CHR Motorsport driver Paul Robson, who now 2.5 seconds behind will know that something has happened to Jones, given that gap has come down quite aggressively, and he'll want to push on a little bit more to give himself an opportunity to make a move. As the drivers head for turn 7 and 8 and up towards 9-10. Meanwhile, we do look to Stein Sani, the AM driver here, all over the back of Simon Hartley, as we ride aboard with the rear of the 2 BMW M4s, the Racing Lab M1 driver from Norway, now trying to gain another place here. Of course, remember, he's got the pace to be leading in the AM class, if not for a mistake earlier that cost him very dear. But Hartley here definitely now making this BMW as wide as possible. It's then Pinder who's a further 8 tenths up the road from the pair of them, but as they come out to turn at number 10 and down towards 11, well, Sani staying close, but not close enough to be able to think about moving to turn 13. It's not really overtaking territory here for 11 and 12. It's about the fast flow, but onto the brakes they go, and as they come down into the final hairpin here, well, they're going to be clearing the first third of this race. They've still got 13 minutes remaining, and what we're hearing that Tony Hobbs has an instant further up the road. He's dropping down the order in the pro class. I'm not quite sure what's happened, but Sani losing out there come the end of this lap and going on to the next one. And as we look from Sani to what is Tony Hobbs, we try and take a look at what exactly has happened to the privateer in the number 5 BMW. Well, we can see some visual damage on the front of the car, definitely improves in terms of the bodywork, but other than that, we're not quite sure what has happened in particular. But I suspect, given where he is on circuit currently, that he's probably had a moment at turns 2 and 3. Perhaps the car's gone round off the turn 2, hairpin onto the transition for that apex curve at 3, where a good number of drivers have had some difficulty with the car sliding on around. but Hobbs still holding on to P8 in the Pro class right now. He's got Jones just in front of him by 1 second. He has got Robson 2 seconds back, and a bit of a buffer in the form of Daniel Pays, the AM driver, immediately behind him as he comes on through. Meanwhile, we do look here to what is Simon Hartley versus Pinder, with Sani looking around the outside. Well, Pinder looking vulnerable in the Indian Motorsport Porsche. He goes a little bit deep. The three of them all start to stack together here as they come into turn number 7, but Pinder defends well as they make the way into turn number 8. We ride on board the gearbox here. The Indian Motorsport Porsche as the Briton makes way for 8, goes a little bit deep there. I think just started to be a bit unsettled by the fact that Hartley and Sani really bearing their fangs down on him as he makes his way through 9, goes deep again. He catches the car in time, but as he makes his way through 10, Pinder really compromised here as they come on through. But to be fair, Hartley not having a great exit out of 10, and right now Sani is going to start to put the approach on him as they head up towards 13. And well, Hartley would definitely need to try and grin and bear this, because otherwise there may be a moving coming as they come into the final corner. Sani looks at it, it's a very late move under braking. It's a beautiful run side by side on the corner, but as they make their way out, Hartley's going to have more of the corner exit to play with here. He loses that initially in the acceleration phase, but now up the hill they go. Sani's a nose ahead, he's half a car ahead almost, and as they head into the braking zone for turn number 1, well, it's Steinar Sani who gains P7 in the AM class, but what a bold overtake, swinging at the last minute to the inside and going all in on his chips, and in the end he gambled, but it was worth the gamble and he's reaped the rewards from it. And now the Racing Lab AM1 driver will go hunting after Joe Pinder for P6 in the AM class, and then it'll be John Doble who's a further 6 seconds up the road as they make their way through turn 4 up towards 5. Meanwhile, a bit further back we've got Matt Strand who's chasing after James Conley in the hunt for his P34 overall as they come through turn number 5, and Strand having a difficult race so far. As meanwhile we have had our first pit stop of the day, and that is John Rooldridge, who on strategy has decided to come in after what was 18 minutes of racing. In fact, also we've had a pit stop for Matt Maddox, but Rooldridge from Revolution Sim Racing making his way out the pit lane right now, and there are the race leaders coming on through as he heads up the hill. And well, he's going to be mindful of the fact that he's got the leaders charging on around. And speaking of your leader, here is Philip Schwerker as the number 63 Porsche charges onto another lap here. 18 minutes complete, still plenty of racing to go, and he'll be thinking about what else is to be here as he heads on down towards turn number 4. And well, he does have Hekon Gestad, who is 1.2 seconds behind, but these two, they have become quite stationary as of late in terms of that gap, and they are trading lap times between them. And as he makes his way up the rise and in towards turn number 6, we'll see if we can give you an idea of that lap time between the two of them. And in fact we do have the lap times between the two drivers here, and you can see, well, in fact we don't have the lap times there. Unfortunately, it does look as though our timings have not come on through. We still do have our battle box, of course, and I can tell you over the last 3 laps these two have been separated to the 1,000th on lap time. That's how close they're running as they make their way in towards turn 7 and 8 here, heading on through up towards 9 and 10. Meanwhile, Hitchens still tucked in behind Tilling as he heads up towards the left-hander of 8. And well, the Symphony Esports white driver, surely right now the team have got to be thinking with the strategist, what can we do to potentially get the number 21 car ahead of Tilling, because Tilling is just becoming an obstacle here. And to be fair, that's not to besmirch Tilling in the fact he's doing a stellar job driving. I think Hitchin at this point may be thinking that he's almost like all the fluid in a wine bottle. The cork hasn't been popped, and he wants Tilling to get out of the way. He wants the proverbial cork to be popped out of the bottle so he can let the lap times flow, but it's just not coming to him. But onto the brakes they go into turn 13. You can see Marinero also close behind the two Lamborghini drivers here, nose to tail as they exit the corner. And what Hitchin can't gain in lap time, surely he's going to have to try and gain through a little bit of fuel saving here, given the fact we're almost at the halfway point of the race, and soon we will be seeing some drivers start to dart into the pits. It will be pit stop season as they come through turn 1. Hitchin and Marinero still close together in the battle for P6 in the elite class and overall. Coming out of the corner, and I can see Jonathan Hitchin there in the YouTube chat saying, look at that traction illegal, in reference to ways Martin Tilling's Porsche in front. Well, as they head up the hill, meanwhile we do have there what I do believe is one of our drivers who's sliding on the inside. It may be a back marker heading the way on around. I think it's John Rooldridge who's just decided to lift off there for drivers ahead of him. But meanwhile we look a little bit further down the order to Casper Brotner here, P6 in the pro class. He's chasing after Darren Sharples, and well, only 4 tenths between the two of them as Sharples in the Audi R8 LMS still ahead for now in the 777 machine. But is his luck running out, or will his lucky 7 stay true as he heads down towards turn number 6? Onto the brakes very shortly. We can see that Mercedes absolutely gargantuan speed coming out of turn number 5, but as they make their way onto the brakes here, the Audi just able to hook it up much more much more composed in terms of that braking approach. And next in the corner there, the gap swings the other way for a brief moment. Brotner definitely starting to wind down that gap to Sharples, and can he potentially look and move on to the next lap? Well, as we see the Briton make his way out of turn at number 8 in towards 9-10. This is where Sharples is going to break away. He needs to do it. Meanwhile, Darren Orkett goes on around, holds the brakes on there on the exit at 9, gets the car back up to speed, and well, a bit of a base manoeuvre there from Mark Johnson, your AM leader. But we come back to what is Darren Fellows through, and then it's Sharples here, and well, the two Darrens running places together. But meanwhile, it's the latter of the two Darrens, Darren Sharples, who is under huge pressure here coming into turn number 13. As they make their way through the left-hander, well, Carl McGuire will be watching on here. The elite class driver will be thinking, okay, the two pros are going to battle, but how do I clear both of them? As we hear that Richard Jones is into the pit lane from P7 in the pro class. He comes in for his scheduled stop, and also what is James Rankin making their way on in. So therefore we are starting to see those pit stops open up. Coming out to turn up 1 down towards 2 here. It's a potential look from Casper Brotner, but he can't quite find it. And we ride on board with the old Dudes and Cars driver, as you can see there on the reverse television camera inside the cockpit. Well, it does look as though objects are much larger than they seem, or are they? It's Carl McGuire looking very close behind. Got a bit of smoke there from a lockup previously into turn number 5, but Brotner going all in on the brakes here. But as he comes on through the right hander, goes in for a late apex. It's a nice run, but look at Sharples just able to carry the speed off the corner. The gap's 3 tenths as they build their way up, and Brotner takes a little look to the inside here, trying to intone a move that's never going to come. And Sharples responds by braking as late as he can and gets it hooked up, but Brotner in return actually lifting off a little bit there before the braking point. And I think now the 111 driver, old Dudes in Cars, is thinking about potentially getting some levity with regards to fuel when they come into the pits. We hear that Hekon Gestad's into the pit lane. As I look out my commentary booth window, he's the first elite driver inside the top 10 of the class to make his way on in. Nobody else is following suit at the moment, as Brotner stays right behind Sharples, coming on through 9 into 10. And how hard he must be working the left side tyres at the moment to get this car to stay close. But it's a beautiful run out of 10 by comparison with Sharples, who just does not put it together. And as they come for 11 into 12, Brotner so close in the corners where the Audi should be the stronger of the two, but in the end it's the other way round onto the brakes into turn 13, and will, much like the previous lap, exiting the lap here with a gap of 4 tenths, onto the power they go, as we hear that Darren Fellows into the pit lane. And now it's going to be Fellows who will shortly be coming out behind this battle, albeit with quite a bit of gap, and he'll look to leapfrog it, there's no question about it. As meanwhile Brotner stays behind Sharples, and on to what for him is lap number 15. Heading into turn at number 2, onto the brakes here. We do look from them to a little bit further back in the order in the form of Darren Orkett, who after that mistake, the Racing Forces driver tucked in behind Mark Johnson, and well, you can see the AM lead there still with what is a 7-second gap to Daniel Pays in the form of Johnson versus Daniel Pays as they make the way on through, and Orkett finds himself in between Tony Hobbs, the same here in P6 in the Pro Class, and a bit of a lonely P6 it must be said at this time, with the fact he has a 20-second gap to Fellows, who's just pitted and come out the pit, and in return he does have a 6-second gap to Casper Brotner in front of him, who's yet to pit, and Hobbs has yet to pit as well. But meanwhile, where has Hekon Gestad come out, I hear you ask? Well, here is the Ignium Motorsport driver and the number 37 Porsche as he comes out to turn number 6 into 7-8, and well, has this worked out is the big question. I think it may have if he doesn't get too close to Cole McGuire within the next couple of laps, given the fact he has bought himself some breathing room on circuit, albeit it's only 2 seconds, and that breathing room is coming down. As he heads on through the right hand, then up towards turn at number 10, and through it into 11 and 12 he goes very shortly. Well, we're coming up towards the long right hand now. Gestad definitely conscious of the fact that we have got Nick Wren, Jonathan Hitchin, and Alvaro Marinero into the pit lane, and also Martin Davidson. So this is where it's going to be very close in terms of who comes out where. Once Gestad comes out the final corner, he's going to gun it now, knowing he's got to give it everything he's got. Meanwhile, Wren's still parked up there and not leaving his pit box at the moment, and I think with that, Gestad will just simply come on through, and indeed he already has his Hekon Gestad, as we then do see Wren making his way out of the pit lane, and behind him will be Jonathan Hitchin, who still stays ahead of Marinero, but in return, now there's going to have to be a response from some of our drivers, in particular Jacko Taylor. Oh goodness me, and the TE Simsport driver, he's dropped down the order of the P4, he's had an instant with the wall coming out of turn number 5, and that's released both Martin Tinney and Nathan Foster up the order in the elite class, and also Billy Bob Ray and Thomas Asphaug up positions in the overall category. They're still P1, P2 in the pro class, but with all that in mind, will Taylor now the wounded car, surely he'll be in soon, and now it is all going to come down to this man versus Hitchin on strategy. We believe the TE Simsport Sport corporate driver Martin Tilling has not quite got the pace necessary in clear air versus Hitchin, but if he responds soon, will it be the right time? And has he been able to save enough fuel in case Hitchin's been able to get the jump on him? But as Tilling comes up towards the final corner, does he peel into the pit lane? Yes, he does. Makes his way on in. Philip Schwerker, meanwhile, into the pit lane already and currently being serviced. And as our drivers make the way on through here, well, we can also see what is Nathan Foster coming out of the corner, charging up towards turn number 1. And, well, going on through here, he'll take the lead of this race for the first time as he breaks his way into the right-hander. And, well, can we see what's going on further back with regards to those strategies? Well, John Edo's yet to pit as well. He moves up to P2 for the time being. Peter Cox in the Pro Class stays out on circuit, but meanwhile Hekon Gestad making his way up towards turn number 1, and we have had Philip Schwerker leave his pit box, in fact leaving to go into turn number 1 as he comes through the right hand pit exit. The gap between himself and Hekon Gestad, where you can see it between the two of them, it is currently standing at 3 seconds as they make the way into turn number 2 once again. But Philip Schwerker has made it count on strategy, and we do believe if things are going to stand as they are, then Gestad, unless he can find the time now, Philip Schwerker will be your race leader when all the pit stops are done, and that will be enough to cause him to jump through the field. But more pit stops ongoing at the moment, and as they do, well, we're hearing that Dan Sharple's exiting the pit lane ahead of Casper Brotner, and in fact we do very shortly get a cue down to the pit lane for you. And in fact we do look here to Dan Sharple's making his way on out in P4 in the Pro Class, and he comes out into clear air. Behind him is Casper Brotner, and Brotner yet to jump Sharples to the pit lane, so it is going to come down to battling on circuit between the two of them as they make the way out of turn 2 into 3. And with Sharples here feeling very comfortable in terms of his placement at the moment, albeit now he's going to have the hard task of keeping a very fast charging Mercedes behind him for the remainder of the race. And with 18 minutes to go plus the final lap, it is going to be a very long race. But meanwhile, with all this happening, what about Hitchin versus Tilling, I hear you ask? Well, here is Martin Tilling, and right now he's in P8 and Jonathan Hitchin is still behind him. Tilling has made it work on strategy. We were pit stop in the end was half a second faster, and the Tiki Simsport corporate driver has nailed it to the fence post. There's no question about it. He's jumped on strategy versus Hitchin, and Ren by comparison is 3 seconds up the road, albeit Tilling here. Mason Owl, the drivers are lining up at the moment with Foster, Eddowes and McGurk in the pit lane now. Well, this will be P4 in the elite class, we reckon, for Martin Tilling. Although I say that, Nathan Foster is currently leaving the pit lane. Where is Nathan Foster? Here he is. He's heading up towards the pit limiter line. He's going to build speed, but Tilling comes on through as he makes his way into turn number 1. What about Hitchin versus what is here? We can see Foster, and Foster gets ahead of Hitchin. Well, Hitchin has lost out massively in the pits as they head into turn number 2. It's Hitchin who's dropped down to P6, and right now Nathan Foster with the shortest pit time of everybody inside the top 10 was only 14 seconds. Well, the Empire Motorsport B driver, he's even done a lot of fuel saving on that opening stint, where he's going to have to do a lot of it now in this second stint. As meanwhile we're hearing that Billy Bob Ray in the Pro Class, by the leaders of the Pro Class, has had an incident that's led him to be towed to the pits, and that means in the Pro Class it is now Thomas Asphaug who is leading ahead of Peter Cox by 4.6 seconds. But as our drivers carry on here, still more to come in terms of pit stops, and Will Foster with that pressure from Hitchin behind, and Hitchin looking for the move as soon as he possibly can. He wants to go hunting after Tilly. He wants the podium slot as they come through the left hand at turn 7 and 8, and we ride on board the gearbox here of the Empire Motorsports B Porsche. Now going through the long left hand of turn number 8, you can see Hitchin once again going a little bit wide, but this time feeling comfortable with the car, and as they head through turn number 9 into 10. Well, this is where the Porsche, if it's going to go strong versus the Lamborghini, it's these corners where it's just able to carry more speed. There's a little bit of gravel kicked up there on the exit of turn number 10, but Nathan Foster not too bothered by that as he carries the speed into 12. Oh my good lord! And that is, I believe, Martin Tilling who's had an error, and with that, that's Hitchin who's been collected, and Jonathan Hitchin into the wall. Tilling, and it's all unfolding disasters. That's Tilling and Jacko Taylor coming together, so the Tiki Simsport and Tiki Simsport corporate drivers being involved in an instant, and Hitchin there. We'd get a replay, but unfortunately we can't, but we saw it, albeit from perhaps a very different angle than you'd normally see an instant. And now Tilling definitely in the wounds, Jacko Taylor as well, and Jonathan Hitchin wounded as he comes into the pit lane, and Hitchin cannot get a break as he's had to be towed to the pits. He hasn't been able to limp only a couple hundred metres from the pit entry, and well, that is a disaster for all three drivers. And right now it opens up where's the battle for a top 5 place to Alvaro Marinero, as we see the number 59 driver on his debut. enjoying what is a really strong run inside the elite class and running in P5, chasing down Nathan Foster, albeit on that last lap he was faster, given that Foster was on an out lap from the pit lane. And as they head down towards turn at number 6, can Marinero go one more place and gain P4 and just be off of the podium slots, as we see that the K-Pax machine charging on round and up towards turn at number 7. Well, he's got time to do it, he's still got 15 minutes, and as he comes through the left-hander, meanwhile we do look a little bit further back to Jacko Taylor, who's come out the pit lane behind Darryl Norquette, with Mark Johnson just behind him. And will the elite driver here after that instant now having to lick his wounds and fight on as they come on down. You can see already Norquette defends to the inside, Taylor switches back as he goes to the dummy there from outside to inside into turn 6. They break, it's going to be close on the brakes here as Norquette turns in, but Taylor finds himself on the apex and gets it done. The TE6 will drive moves up to P10 in the elite class, or P15 overall, Norquette behind, and then Mark Johnson here, well, the AM leader, he's got an 8.5 second gap to Daniel Pays in class, so therefore he'll feel pretty comfortable about this. But Tony Hobbs, who's running in P6 in the pro class, may want to make a little bit more ground, given that he's got Richard Jones closing fast in P7 behind. As we can see here, the quartet drives coming on through, and it is Richard Jones who's trying to make it a quintet as he comes on through turn at number 10 once more, but coming through the right hander and up towards 11 into 12. Meanwhile, we look from him to a little bit further up the order in the form of what is, Darren Fellows, and Darren Fellows right now P3 in the pro class. He has got behind him Travis Wallace, and Wallace staying close, and Wallace enjoying a strong run on his debut to be just off of the top 10, and Wallace P8 in the elite class. Fellows by comparison behind onto the podium slots at the moment, as we are hearing that Tony Hobbs is getting a little bit closer as we look back here to Hobbs versus Johnson into turn at number 1 as he comes on through the right handle. Johnson's got a little bit wide there. Hobbs thinks about it into turn 2. This is about for overall position and not for class position, and Hobbs just staying there as they make the way through 2, 3 and into 4. They're coming on down the hill and through the long left-hander now. Hobbs, of course, conscious of the fact that on that previous lap Jones was not quite on the pace with him, so therefore if he can continue to deliver the laps, then Hobbs may be able to break away and start to go hunting down his next rival in the form of what is Casper Brotner, albeit there's been a change of plays here, and in fact it's Darren Sharples who's now in P5 in the pro class, and Brotner got it done on the run down the straight. Then I wonder what exactly has happened between the two of them, in the fact that Casper Brotner came on through before the braking zone, and will Darren Sharples maybe tucking him behind. Perhaps he's worried about fuel and may not have enough fuel to get to the end of the race, and has decided just to lift off and lift it into a P5 finish. As they make the way through turn at number 9 into 10, we'll have to wait and see. But coming on through the long right-hander and all the way up towards turns 11 and 12, well, you can see Sharples there staying up with Brotner, but just not quite able to put the pressure on as they come out the final couple of corners and towards the third of the hairpins. As he heads in towards the braking zone here, it's going to be telling us they X out, because this is where the Audi should be the stronger car. Albeit if Sharples here just simply stays behind and doesn't quite get the run off the corner, it may be a sign of a little bit of fuel saving at play, and it does look as though perhaps right now the 777 Audi is not going to have the tank to the end unless he starts to shave off some of the fuel usage. But meanwhile, a bit further back here, we've got the battle for what is P17 overall between Hobbs on the outside and Johnson on the inside. Johnson, your AM leader, versus the P6 Pro driver Hobbs, and Hobbs looks at the cutback here, coming out of 1, but it's a very difficult corner to get a cutback out of turn 1, given the fact it's a very late apex, and also it's a highly cambered piece of road as they made the way out of turn 2 into 3. Well, Hobbs is there, but he just can't quite find the move as they come through the long left-hander. And up towards turn at number 5 they go, but Hobbs continues to try and put the pressure on as much as he possibly can, as meanwhile we look from them back to your overall race leader, and what is your elite class leader in that Philipp Schwerke, as we see the number 63 driver enjoying an absolutely stellar run so far, and there is nothing between him and Gristad as they head across the timeline this time. 10.5 minutes remaining, that equates to approximately 7 more laps of racing, including the one they've gone on to, and that time around Schwerke at 37.243, Gristad at 37.278. It's 300s in the favour of Schwerke, but next time around it could swing the other way. That is how much they're pushing one another all the way as they come through turns 2, 3 and into 4, and Hekon Gristad right now thinking, what do I have to do to get under the skin of the race leader? Well, he's got to get close to this. He's got to get within a second to start to pick up a distant toe down the extended straight. Otherwise, the new motorsport driver is going to simply have to wait, watch and listen for when there could be a potential mistake from Schwerke. But again, we know the only thing that Schwerke can make a mistake on so far this season is potential fuel, but otherwise he's got it absolutely hooked up to a T. Meanwhile, battle off circuit, in fact, battle off camera we should say, but on circuit, Mark Johnson has just been passed by Tony Hodds. We look back to him here for the battle of P17 overall, and Johnson's going to try and come back here. The UKSimRacing Moss driver looking around the outside of the Pro Tier Hobbs, who goes a bit deep into one. Johnson looks at the cut back here, he gets a better exit, and in fact he's going to go all in on the brakes here into two. Hobbs gives him the space. Meanwhile, behind we can see there, tilling up the inside of Jones into turn number 2 on a recovery drive there for TT Sport Corpa, and he moves up into P19 overall. It's not a class position change, given the fact he just passed the Pro as the elite driver, but Jones there under pressure and relenting as they make the way into turn number 4 and 5. Well, right now Tilling will be looking to go hunting after Johnson, knowing that it's not going to be for some time before he bumps into fellow elite driver, and that'll be Darren Norquette, who's 3.5 seconds up the road, but he's closing rapidly. Meanwhile, we look to Darren Fellows battling side by side here with Wallace. That is Travis Wallace, who's looking for the way on around the pro driver in P3 in the pro class of BDM Racing, holding off the P8 elite driver. And well, we are definitely starting to see a little bit of rivalry between opposite class drivers here in terms of their fighting. And well, for Fellows, you can understand why he wants an overall top 10 here. He's not quite done with just being on the pro podium, given the fact that it's a 4-second gap, almost a 5-second gap in fact to Peter Cox. So therefore he's not going to worry too much about second place in class. Instead, he wants to try to hold on to an overall top 10, which for pro drivers, of course, is a huge accolade to finish inside the top 10 overall, given the pace of the elite class and how many drives are taken to the circuit today in every round. But as he comes out of the corner here, Wallace is going to look up the inside. He'll have all the run he needs under braking, and I think Travis Wallace will get this done for TT Sport Tower as he makes it count. There's contact there between Fellows and Wallace, and well, I think there Fellows would argue that Wallace just cut him off a little bit too early on the nose. Wallace would argue that there was no route to an apex there at turn number 3, but either way you cut it, it's not worked out for Travis Wallace, and now Darren Fellows will hold that P10 as Wallace drops down to P9 in the class, being passed by the elite driver, his fellow elite of Carl McGurk, and also he has got in front of him was Joe Pinder there, albeit Pinder is a lap down in the AM class, as meanwhile we look from them to a little bit further down the road to Martin Tilling, who after making the move only moments ago to move up into what's P19 overall, now trying to find his way past Mark Johnson in the hunt for P18 overall as he charges his way on down towards turn number 6. And well, here you can see Johnson moving to the inside, I think deciding to lift off and let the move come on through, given the fact they're not battling within the same class, and therefore for Johnson he just wants a safe and steady cruise to the finish line. And who can blame him, given the fact that right now your AM leader almost 8 seconds clear of Daniel Pays, and well, Pays by comparison has got growing pressure behind, and well, you can see behind that is Simon Andre Livingston, and well, the old duty cars driver will need to keep pushing on here as the Racing Lab M1 Ferrari is charging after him, and on that previous lap took a couple of attempts out of him, and if it carries on at this rate of knots, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a potential move for P2 come the very end of this race, given the reflection of the lap times. But as he comes through the right hander behind, we've got Robson and Rankin at the 2 CHR Motorsport drivers, P7, P8 in the pro class, and what is for them P22, P23 overall, and they're staying together, close together here, running comfortably as they make the way on around with John Doble closed up half a second behind. But as they make the way up towards turn number 13 here, we look back to Pays versus what is Livingstone, and will Pays gets the better run out to the final corner this time around. But what's the lap times going to be between them? For Pays, it was 39.466, for Livingston at 39.126. It's another 3.5 tenths gain there for Livingston. Livingston is on a mission. He thinks he can get P2 here, and well, all for it, of course, the team will be. They'll be cheering him on down in the garage as he comes through the right hander at turn number 2, and the number 3 car is absolutely flying in the late stage of the race here at Jerez, as meanwhile, as he makes his way through turn number 4, it's all calm inside the top 10 at this time. We'll keep our eyes out in case anything else happens, but we will continue to focus here for now on the battle for P2 in the AM class as they make the way all around, keeping in mind, of course, that Mark Johnson being a further 8 seconds up the road, we is just continuing to saunter off to distance and feeling very comfortable as he does so. As we can see here, Livingston right now closing up a little bit more under braking, but on the straights, that's where the Mercedes is just able to gain versus the Ferrari. The Ferrari does have a very high top end speed, but it does take a lifetime getting there in 6th gear, and as they make their way out to turn 7 into 8, Livingston will look to do it all in the corners, as that's where the Mercedes is a little bit weaker by comparison. But making the way on around and heading up towards turns 9 and 10. We do briefly cut up here to what is Casper Brotner, who right now does have Jacko Taylor just behind him. And Brotner under a little bit of pressure for old dudes in cars for overall P13 versus the TT Sport driver as they make their way out of the final corner and onto the start-finish line, and where it's going to be 3 more laps of racing they go onto, as right now I think the Mercedes driver will be looking for a potential opportunity to let the place go, given that Sharples is a whole 3 seconds behind, so Brotman does not really need to fight this, and he's not really gaining time on P3 in class driver in the pro class of Darren Fellows, who is 13 seconds up the road and breaking away gradually. So I think for Brotman it's all about just simply reacting at the right time here. Of course, he won't want to lose track position, nobody ever wants to, but is it worth battling towards the end? Meanwhile, a bit further down the order, battling in the AM class, the P6 in class, it's Simon Hartley versus James Whea's there, Steiner Sani, with James Connolly, the next driver behind, albeit 17 seconds off of this battle. But as we see these two making the way up towards turn number 1, well, behind them we have got the overall race leaders coming on through, and here is Philip Schwerker making his way onto what for him is lap number 26. Not many more to go here, 2 more remaining, including the one he's gone on to, and feeling very comfortable in the car at the moment. But as we look from him, we hear that Richard Jones having a slight connectivity issue, but nothing to come of it. We do look from our race leader back to this battle for P6 in the AM class, and Will Hartley there defending at the moment by just taking the natural race line, goes a little bit deep off corner, and as we ride on board the gearbox here of the T6 Sport Tyre machine, well, the racing at lab and machine also getting closer and closer at every stretch. But onto the brakes, they both battle in equal machines. There's a little tap there to the rear of Hartley's car from Sani, a little bit of a love tap to say, I'm coming for you whether you like it or not. And Will Hartley at this point, he'll be egged on to simply defend, because there's no way he's closing up to Adinsa at this point in the race. Given the gap is currently 17 seconds, so instead it'll all be about trying to hold on to P6 for as long as possible. But coming up towards the turn at number 9 and 10, onto the brakes here, and will roll his way on through. It's all going to be about keeping calm and just nailing those apexes. That's the challenge here as he comes out of turn number 10 up towards 11 and gets a really nice exit there through 10, and that gives him a gap up to half a second as they head up towards turn at number 13. Meanwhile, a little bit of drama further up the road. We're hitting that Carl McGuirk has had a moment. That's dropped him down to P19 overall, and outside of what was the top 10 in the elite class. We're hearing that Richard Jones has had to come into the pits for recently, and Carl McGuirk has had to be towed to the pits. We're not quite sure what's happened there beyond what we just mentioned too. You haven't seen anything on camera, but meanwhile we do look from this battle for P6 in the AM class back up to Darren Norquette, who on what is the inside here versus Tilling, and Martin Tilling looking for the move to be in the final top 10 spot of the elite class here as they make their way on out. But what was their turn at number 6 and through 7 in Tate, and Darren Norquette defending hard as he comes through the long left here of turn number 8, Tilling straight behind him, and will the two of them ever close? They head into the braking zone, and Norquette defending once again. Tilling looking for the cutback here on the apex of 9. Not really much room to play with for a cutback move out of 9 into 10, but the idea is try to unsettle Norquette and get him to go deep, and that's exactly what happens as Tilling gets around the inside. Norquette goes wide, and Tilling moves up into P10 in the elite class with only 1 more lap to go as we're to understand it. But as he makes his way out to turn number 12, now Norquette will look to come back at him as soon as humanly possible. But as they break the way on through into left-hander turn number 13, meanwhile we look to your race leader here of Philip Schwerker as he comes on down through turn number 3 into 4, and well, as the time wears on, that's not turns 3 and 4, that's turns 7 and 8. He will have 1 more lap after this, and well, right now 2.2 seconds is the delta between himself and Hekon Gestad, and feeling comfortable, feeling strong here. But is it going to hold on all the way to the very end? That will be the question for him as he comes down in towards that turn number 11. Of course, right now he'll be looking at the fuel gauge and thinking, is there enough fuel to get to the end of this race unscathed? And well, Hekon Gestad just took a whole second out of him. Well, I think our timings have been updated slightly as they make their way through turn number 13, and coming on through, we go on to the final lap then, ladies and gentlemen. It's Philip Schwerker who leads at the foreground of your camera, Hekon Gestad P2, and it's Nick Wren a further, what is 12 seconds back, but the race leader separated by only 1.5 seconds as they go on to their 28th and final lap here at the Circuito de Jerez, Ángel Nieto. And as the Spanish circuit right now, it's maximum temperature and indeed rubbered in completely. All the drivers setting the best possible laps they can and knowing that everything's on the line in the final lap of the day. And speaking of things being on the line, we do look back to that battle of P10 in the elite class between Martin Tilling and Darren Norquette. They'll have 1 more lap to go after this one that they're currently on as they make their way on around there. Whereas the combined pair turns 9 and 10. They've got Hobbs just behind them, P6 in the pro class, and ahead of them they've got Sharp with P5 in the pro, so it's a little bit bit of the Pro Elite sandwich as they make their way onwards towards that final lap. The 45-minute timer has been hit, so now the next time around the race leader will call the checkered flag, and Norquette here is getting close, but he's not close enough to try to look for a move, as meanwhile we look a little bit back towards what is Simon Hartley versus Stein Arsani as they head on through. It's their turn at 17 to 8, and behind them they do have the race leaders. So this is going to get very interesting right at the end of the battle for P6 in the AM class. Hartley doing everything he can to hold on, and Wilsani very close, but he's not able to find the final 5% to look for the move. So as they charge their way on through, turns 11 into 12, where it looks like I think Hartley there in a very slow run off corner, and Sani in fact backing off with blue flags waving, and I think now Hartley will back off as well as Philip Schwerker comes on through, and as he heads onto the brakes here, where it's going to be everybody piling on in. But I think Sani looking for the move very late there on the final corner. He goes for it, but meanwhile, coming out the final corner, he's done it, ladies and gentlemen. He's made it to the end on fuel, and Philip Schwerger takes his maiden win of the season in the elite and overall categories ahead of Hekongestad P2, and then it will be very shortly with Sani finishing just ahead of Hartley in the battle for P6 in the AM class. It will be Nick Wren who takes P3 overall in the elite class for TE Simsport Corpa ahead of Nathan Foster P4, who was closing late on in the race but couldn't quite find enough time to do it. Alvaro Marinero on his debut will take P5 ahead of Thomas Aspau, who finishes P6 overall and takes the pro win there by 10 seconds over Peter Cox. Between them it will be what is Mark Davison and John Eddowes P6, P7 in the elite class. And then Peter Cox there will come on through to what is P2 in the pro class ahead of Darren Fellows, who crossed the line third place in the pro class there in a stellar drive for BDM Racing ahead of Travis Wallace, who finishes P11 overall, takes P8 in the elite class, and with it the best of the rest position in the overall category. And then Jacko Taylor P9 there as he comes on through ahead of Casper Brotner, who will be taken, and that was P9 in the elite class, and Casper Brotner P13 overall, but for him P4 in the pro class ahead of Darren Sharples, who finished off the pro top 5, and ahead of what was Tony Hobbs, who was P6 in the class. Between them Martin Tilley and Daryl Norquette, with Hobbs there just parking up as he makes his way on through on the cool down lap. Mark Johnson crossed the line, your and win in the end. We missed him crossing the line, but we're not going to miss him now, as I don't think he can quite believe the win he's pulled off today by 9.5 seconds over Daniel Pays, who finished P2 in the AM class, P19 overall, with Simon Andre Livingston just behind in the end by 1 second. P3 in the AM class there, P20 overall. Paul Robson P21, James Rankin P22, John Doe finished P4 in the AM class, P23 overall. And then very shortly, Satinder Deemster taking P5 in the AM class, was P24 overall ahead of Oyvind Breivik P25, and then Matt Strand P26 out there, as we do see Strand calling himself down now on the Racing Lab and Audi's cool down lab. And then Stein Arsani and Simon Hartley, who we saw cross the line, they finished a lap down technically, P27 at P28. But as we see our drivers just making the way on through here, what a race for everybody up and down the field. But for this man in the pro class, well, Billy Bob Ray having that instant mid-race definitely would have helped, but the Racing Lab AM driver of Aspau cannot be denied the fact that since the promotion he's looking incredibly fast, and well, he's gone from AM to pro, and well, could he potentially see himself in elite later on this season given the pace he's demonstrated? We'll have to see, but the 26 driver there laying down a huge marker versus his pro peers, and I think Peter Cox and Darren Fellows, just named two, will have to react. But with that, and also Simon Andre Livingston having a stellar day to fight for the podium in the AM class, and only missing out on second place by a second in versus Daniel Pays. Deserved drive from him, indeed from all the drivers taking the checker flag in this race. And well, as they make their way back towards the pit lane, let's take you through those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. We're here after what was, in the end, a grand 45 minutes of racing in round 2 of the UKSimRacing GT3 League Season 10, brought to you on iRacing. Philip Schwerker taking the overall win there. The privateer ahead of Hekongestad by 6.5 tenths of a second at the line. I think the Indian Motorsport driver had enough fuel to chase down Schwerker. Schwerker was running out of fuel towards the end, but still, he's nailed it, and he takes his first win. Gustad still looking for his first win of the season, but another very strong performance, and you can imagine he'll be looking for his first win, third time lucky, in round number 3. Nick Wren fighting for a P3 there for TE Simsport Corpa in a deserved P3 ahead of Nathan Foster for Empire Motorsport B, and then Alvaro Marinero P5 there, the privateer, having a stellar debut ahead of Thomas Aspau, who completed the run to P6 overall and with it took the pro win. Mark Davidson P7 there behind the Racing Lab AM drive for UKSimRacing Hunt ahead of John Eddowes for TE Simsport Kimmy, and then Peter Cox and Darren Fellows for UKSimRacing Moss and BDM Racing respectively, the two pro drivers wrapping up the top 10 overall, and with it also the Pro podium behind Aspal, with them finishing P2, P3 in class respectively. Best of the rest there, Travis Wallace for UKSimRacing Tyre, P11, but as we can see on the overall standings, we're just going to now cover the podium finishers of the AM class in terms of their overall positions and also the retirees, and then focus on the particular classes. And right at the bottom there, inside the top 18, Mark Johnson for UKSimRacing Moss bringing on home the AM class victory. Behind him, inside the top 20, Daniel Pays and Simon Andre Livingston for Old Dudes in Cars and Racing Lab AM1. They complete the top 20 and with it the AM podium. And as we continue our way on down, we can see the top 26 there all the way down to Matt Strand from Racing Lab AM bringing on home the race on the lead lap. And then finishing was a lap down, but not to be understated, Steinar Sani, James Connolly, Matt Maddox, and Joe Pinder, with 2 laps down to Rob Armstrong. Carl McGurk, 3 laps down then P33, and then Richard Jones, the last of our finishers at P34, the privateer, ahead of our retirees of Jonathan Hitchin, Billy Bovray, Jonathan Waldridge and Ollie Pimley. And also we did have 2 more retirements in the form of Brandon Hay and David Flanagan, with Brandon Hay having that incident on the open lap coming out of turns 2 and 3, and David Flanagan not able to make it to the grid. But as we now come on to our individual class finishing positions, and we give you the full roll call of these, Felix Schwerker taking the win in the elite class, as we start off with the elite, ahead of Hekon Gristad and Nick Wren completing the podium. Then Nathan Foster in P4, and definitely one to watch out for in terms of battling for the podium from race to race for Empire Motorsport B, ahead of Alvaro Marinero, and then Mark Davidson fighting on through 8 seconds behind the top 5 to a P6 finish, with John Ellows, Travis Wallace, Jacko Taylor and Martin Tillin completing the top 10. Best of the rest, Darren Norquette there in P11 for Racing Forces, ahead of his teammate Carl McGurk, and then Jonathan Hitchin and David Flanagan with their respective retirements, P13 and P14. We'll then come on to the Pro class meanwhile. And we can see here in the Pro class, Thomas Asphaug taking the win for Racing Lab AM by 10 seconds over Peter Cox, with Darren Fellows completing the podium there a further 8 seconds behind. Then Casper Brotner finishing a further 13 seconds down, we should say, in P4 there. But the Old Dudes in Cars driver ever reliable to finish inside the top 5, and Darren Sharp was completing the top 5 in the Pros. Tony Hobbs and Paul Robson there in quite a different race for the pair of them, with Hobbs being towards the rear of the top 5 all the way through, but not able to creep on in, and Paul Robson finding himself in a bit of no man's land, but ever in the company of his fellow CHR Motorsport teammate James Rankin, and then Oyvind Breivik P9 ahead of Matt Strand to complete the top 10, with Rob Armstrong finishing 2 laps down for UKSimRacing Hunt there in P11, Richard Jones 4 laps down, and then the retirees, Billy Bob Ray, who was leading for the majority of the race, but a mid-race incident costing him very dear, and the Empire Motorsport B driver will look to try and regroup and come back strong next round, and then Ollie Pimley and Brandon Hay, the other 2 retirees in the Pro class. We then come to the AMS, last but not least, and we can see here in the AM class, Mark Johnson taking the win by 9.5 seconds over Daniel Pays, with the Old Dudes in Cars driver doing well to hold off Stephen Andre Livingston, but we definitely need to keep our eyes on the Racing Lab AM1 driver, because whilst Johnson may be flying up front, it does look as though Livingston is really building the pace, and well, could he potentially be taking the win next round. John Doe will P4 there, and another solid driver, the UKSimRacing Kimi driver, ahead of his Corpus sister team's driver, Satinda Dienster, and then we do see Steiner Sani battling to P6 near on the final lap, just in front of the leaders, ahead of Simon Hartley into the final corner with a sneaky move for P6. Both drivers finishing a lap down and being followed up by James Connolly and Matt Maddox and Joe Pinder to complete the AM top 10. And then behind the Indian Motorsport driver with the mid-race retirement, Revolution Sim Racing's John Waldridge finishing at P11. But that's the results, ladies and gentlemen. And well, we're going to be very shortly, of course, getting ready for our post-round interviews of our drivers, because of course it has been a hot day out on circuit in the sun here at the Jerez circuit. But what did our drivers have to think about it? Well, we'll be back in approximately 12 minutes to find out. But until then, don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss the interviews that are upcoming. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to get our post-round interviews underway, but just before we do, a quick word with regards to our website at UKSimRacing Community, because you've been tuning in today via our official YouTube, and we do recommend you give a like to the broadcast, and also subscribe if you haven't for future broadcasts, but we also do have our website, which is visible on screen right now. We can keep up to date with all the latest information regarding UKSimRacing Community Leagues, and also the broadcast, and also for you in particular, our affiliates. For UK Sim Racing, we are affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere, and Demon Tweaks. And if you do head to our website, and the address is uksimracing.co.uk today, you can see on here we do have a link to our official Discord in the top right of the screen. And if you click there, you'll be taken to our Discord, which, if you do want to take part in any of our leagues, you need to be a member of our Discord. By default, it's a mandatory requirement, but also it's a means of being able to access a number of discount codes which are provided by our affiliates. And these discount codes are a way of you getting a discount on your purchase, but also at the same time being able to support UK Sim Racing. Because if you do make a purchase using one of our affiliates' discount codes, well, it ends up in a discount for you and a kickback to us. And because at UK Sim Racing we are a non-profit organisation, all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series, including future renditions of the GT3 League, the Porsche Cup, and we've got plenty more planned for 2023 and onwards. But indeed, if you haven't been to our website, definitely check it out. The website is uksimracing.co.uk. But as we now come on to our interviews for today, we've only got one interview on the card, and that is going to be with Nathan Foster from Ignium Motorsport. The elite driver having a stellar day, and indeed a stellar performance to go with it, having started just inside the top 10 and to cut his way through the field as rapidly as possible. And as he gets ready to join us, it'll be interesting to hear his thoughts on what has been a race which could have been a little bit of a quiet one potentially, but at the same time one where he's had to work hard for it, and picking his way on through the order as rapidly as possible, and in the end making it count. Now we do have just a very slight delay, ladies and gentlemen, whilst we are making a quick fix to our audio, but it will be getting underway very shortly indeed. And in fact, as he does join me now in the interview room, Nathan, it looked tough out there. It looked hard, fast, and it definitely looked to be a slippery circuit, but you made it on through and brought on through what was a P4 both overall and in the elite class. You must be absolutely pleased with your performance at Jerez.
New to iRacing this season, didn't get much time on track before the race, but was able to sort of pull something together. And after a pretty terrible quali as well, I very pleased with fourth.
Oh, indeed. And just take us through, from your perspective, the Jerez circuit, because as you say, it's relatively new to iRacing, not one that you've necessarily had much time to learn. So what's been your focus in learning the circuit ahead of the race?
Just getting as many laps in as I could, really. It's a fun track to drive. It flows really well. Well, this version of it anyway, not the one with the chicane at the end, but the last couple corners as well in the Porsche, pretty on edge and pretty fun. So just getting the reps in, really.
Well, indeed, and you looked very comfortable, to be fair, in the Porsche. It seems to be a car that goes well with you as a driver. Is it the car that you're planning to stick with the whole season? Because we saw some stellar pace from you in the Empire Motorsport B Porsche back at the Red Bull Ring as well.
Yeah, it will be the car I stay in. Yeah, I don't think there's not much that will change my mind at this point.
Well, that's good to hear. Deciding to stick with the classic six-cylinder German machine all the way through the season. And coming on to your qualifying session today, of course, qualifying being a bit different from the norm, with a grand total of what was 39 cars out of the circuit at any given point in time. It was crowded, but you had 30 minutes and you did find some time, but my gut feeling says there might have been a bit more lap time out there for you.
I don't think I enjoyed a single minute of that qualifying session. I couldn't find any space on track. Every time I did find any space, I was off track or making a mistake, and left it to the last minute to get a half decent lap in. But yeah, I just never got in the flow for that session.
Oh, that was very unfortunate. So not quite in the flow, but still qualifying inside the top 10. And as we see the race get underway on the replay in the background right now, you started making some ground early on, albeit it did look as though everyone in front of you was fighting hard and you were being a bit more tactical. Was it always the focus of your race just to take it slow?
I think, yeah, just I was letting the start play out, taking any positions that I could, but just waiting for the cars in front to settle down a bit. And yeah, I was just happy to sort of sit back a little bit and watch it unfold. And I think I was always of the mind that it's not particularly easy to pass here. So I've settled into sort of fuel saving pretty early on. I think the second lap I started fuel saving, so after that it was sort of decided my strategy from there.
Indeed, coming on to strategy, we of course have seen that over the first 2 rounds now, this idea of the undercut versus the overcut, and it did look as though the undercut was quite powerful around here if you were in a battle, but in the early stage of the race it looked as though it was quite quiet for you and you had plenty of options available. Were you toying up in your mind in terms of how long you wanted to go? And what was the deciding factor?
I think just generally the pace of the car in front was good enough, and I was quite comfortable sitting in behind and lifting and saving. So at that point, if the pace had dropped a little bit, then I'd probably have jumped in and tried to make the most of the undercut. But the pace was good enough that I was happy staying out as long as I could.
Indeed, staying out as long as you could and finding some space out in the circuit and coming away from strategy to driving around here under race conditions. Of course, the Porsche quite a slidey car, but we got to see it so many times, not just in terms of your car, but also other Porsches out there. It seemed to have great traction, particularly out of those low-speed hairpins. Was it a pleasure to drive as the tyre wear came in, or was it becoming a car where it was sort of on edge a lot?
No, I think, to be fair, I had a really good setup for this race, and it never really felt out of control. I went through a few setup changes in the week in preparation, and yeah, just managed to get something dialed in that worked all the way around, really.
Well, indeed, a very comfortable setup in the end. It did look as though you and your peers all racing quite well in the Empire Motorsport outfits, both A and B. And as we see you making the move on one of your teammates there at the moment, up the inside into turn number 6. Seems to be quite a positive atmosphere down at what used to be the Sim and Racing Garage, now Empire Motorsport. What's the feeling like after 2 rounds in general?
Yeah, I think we've got a good, strong team going, and Billy Bob obviously had a really good qualifying session. Unfortunately, made a mistake in the race that cost him, but I've got no doubt that we'll be up there fighting for race wins in all the classes that we're competing in.
Well, we look forward to seeing how all the team get on. And coming back to yourself, we saw in the late stage of the race, you started to gain a little bit of time versus Nick Wren, who running in the Audi R8 seemed to be starting to fall off. Do you feel as though if you had a bit more time, a podium was on the cards, or was a P4 the best you could get out the car, given the attrition and also given how dangerous this circuit can be to the slight off?
I definitely would have taken a few more laps, but I was also a bit low on fuel, so I gave it a few push laps to sort of see how much of a dent I could make, and then see if I could sort of start playing on Nick's mind. But after that, I did need to save to get to the end, unfortunately. I went a bit tight on the fuel.
Was a little bit tight there, but you brought it on home in P4, and with that it means that currently you're running P3 in the Elite Championship, level on points with Jacko Taylor, but ahead based on result count back. And next time we head to Detroit for the Belle Isle Grand Prix, how are you feeling for the city of Detroit?
Yeah, I love the track, to be fair, and looking forward to it. I just need to hopefully sort some quali pace out, and we'll be looking for a good result there.
Well, may the good result come your way. And just before we do let you go, Nathan, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, we'll give a quick shout out to the guys at Empire Motorsport who were watching and competing in that race today. And yeah, hopefully we'll go on and bring some wins home.
Well, I'm sure they'll appreciate it, but with that, we've really appreciated you joining us in the interview room this evening, Nathan. Once again, congratulations on your P4 finish overall and in the elite class today, and we look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time. In fact, this weekend's time, I should say, as I get my clock straight in my head at Detroit.
Yes, Paul, thank you very much.
All the best. So hearing there from Nathan Foster, our elite driver in the Empire Motorsport B Porsche 911 GT3R, and a positive day today at the Jerez circuit, in the fact able to bring on home a P4 despite qualifying not working out, and advising that he did feel as though qualifying never really worked out. It wasn't a happy qualifying session, but a much happier race. The only downside being he needed a couple more laps to potentially hunt down and take a podium spot off of Nick Wren. But still, plenty of positive for Empire Motorsport B, and also for Empire Motorsport as a a whole. And also Billy Bob Ray there being mentioned, albeit as you can see them both on camera here sharing the same real estate on the television, but of course it didn't quite work out for Billy Bob Ray midway through the race, dropping it from the lead, but still he'll take the positives from that, and Nathan Foster on a personal level will be looking to shoot high for the podium next time out in Detroit. But will it come to him? That will be the big question that we'll have to wait and see. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our post-round interviews for today. Only the one, and that was not from Ignia Motorsports driver Nathan Foster. I do apologise there for the fact we do seem to have an incorrect name, but from Empire Motorsport B, Nathan Foster, and what a pleasure to hear from him as always, as he definitely did make the results count for him today. And well, will he be able to continue that run of form? That will be the challenge that confronts him come the next round. But as we now head from our interviews, it is time for us to take a look at the latest standings after 2 rounds, and well, of course, these standings provisional, subject to any steward's decisions. And we can see, firstly, starting with the elite class, it's Hekon Kristad who leads the way for Ignia Motorsport on 76 points, now 10 clear of Philip Schwerker going into round number 3. And well, for Kristad, it's been consistency that's reigned supreme in the fact he's now made it 2 P2s on the bounce, yet to find a win. But will he be able to find it as of Detroit? That'll be the challenge facing him. And Philip Schwerker, meanwhile, picking up his first win of the season and in the hunt for the lead, albeit a 10-point deficit and only a 2-point advantage over the pair of both Nathan Foster and Jacko Taylor. We can see also Nick Wren there inside the top 5, only 2 points off of his peers in the battle for P3, and then Martin Tillin with an 8-point distance to the top 5. He starts to form the rest of the pack that's all baying to try and hunt down a top 5 slot. Behind Tillin, only 4 points off, it's John Eddowes, who despite the fact he's not been on the pace in qualifying, his consistency has shone through for Tiki Simsport Kimi in the races, and in Darren Norcare and Sam Congreve a little bit further behind with Congreve, and also Joe Newman not in attendance today, and therefore they've dropped to P9, P10 respectively, but the Empire Motorsport A drivers will be looking to bounce back as of this coming weekend. Best of the rest there, Alvaro Marinero in P11 on his debut, picking up a stellar result there, 32 points for what was a top 5 finish, and with that, moving on forward, and then it's Mark Davidson ahead of Travis Wallace with Alexander Hill and Jonathan Hitchin completing the top 15, with Jonathan Hitchin being deprived and denied of a potential result today with that late instant after the difficulties of Austria as well. The Symphony Esports white driver knowing now that he's got to nail every round from this point onwards to be right back up there come the final round of the season. And then Carl McGirt from Racing Forces having a good debut in the season, 18 points to his name, ahead of Ryan Davies, David Flanagan and Austin William Campbell, who complete the standings here and yet to compete in a single round. We then come on to the pro class meanwhile, and we can see here that after 2 rounds of racing, it is Peter Cox who leads the way on what is 76 points and a 12-point advantage for UKSimRacing Moss's driver over the privateer of Darren Sharples. It's very close in the battle for P2 behind, with Thomas Asphaug running up into P3 and only a point off of Sharples. And I think there might be some sparks between them in Detroit. And then we do have an 11-point gap to P4 driver Oyvind Breivik as the Racing Lab AM driver following his teammate up into the top 5, and he's got a 4-point advantage over Richard Jones. And then CHR Motorsports James Rankin, who is in P6 there and 4 points off of the top 5, but putting in a good pair of performances and 26 points to his name now, with Matt Strand there in P7, ahead of Nathan J. Scott, David Larson and Darren Fellows to complete the top 10. And Fellows with his debut result as of today, not racing in round number 1, starting off very strong there with what was that 3rd place finish in class. And then Casper Brotner P11 at best of the rest for Old Dudes in Cars, ahead of Tony D. Hobbs, Brandon Hay, Billy Bob Ray and Paul Robson to complete the top 15. Next, UKSimRacing hunts Rob Armstrong at P16 in what was a challenging day for him at Jerez, ahead of Ollie Pimley and Joel Amos. We then come on to the AM class standings, and we can see here after 2 rounds, it's Mark Johnson who's gained the lead. Only 6 points clear, however, of John Doble. In the battle between the UKSimRacing Moss and the Tiki Simsport Kimi drivers, where it does look as though that Johnson has had the 2 wins in his pocket, albeit what is there a 6-point penalty costing him very dear, and in return at Doble with the consistency with what was a 4th place finish today and a podium at last time out. He's looking very strong indeed as he creeps ahead of Seaman Andre Livingston, albeit you can see the Racing Lab and 1 driver only 2 points off of Doble, and therefore we do have a top 3 that's to feast eyes at in the fact there's only 8 points between the trio. A further 8 points behind. It's Stein Arsani, who made a great recovery today after battling for the lead early on. And you can imagine the Racing Lab and one driver feels as though he should be up inside that battle for the lead, and he'll be looking to creep through it next time around, with Satine de Dienster in P5 for TKSimSport Corpa, ahead of Matt Maddox from BDM Racing, only based on result count, back in the battle for P5, and Daniel Pays at P7 there on 56 points, also inching close. James Connolly, Simon Hartley and Thomas Barjuk complete the top 10, with John Aldridge there in P11, best the rest of Revolution Sim Racing, 8 points off of the top 10, and ahead of Joe Pinder based on result count back between the two of them. And then Matt Edmondson P13 ahead of Eric Stegen and Ben Watkinson in the run for P15, with the Revolution Sim Racing drive being followed up by Baz Meacham, Frank Klein and Marvin Cruz to complete the standings. But as we then come from our Drivers' Championship standings to the Teams' Championship standings, we can give you the update and say, ladies and gentlemen, that currently it is UKSimRacing Moss who lead the way by 22 points ahead of Racing Lab and 1, but it's getting very close in the battle for P2, with TKSimSport Corp only 4 points off and a further 6 points to TKSimSport Kimi. Racing Lab and P5 on 115 points. They are 9 points clear of Empire Motorsport B, within a growing gap of 8 points to Ignium Motorsport in P7, and they are ahead of VDM Racing by only 2 points, with Old Dudes in Cars and TKSimSport wrapping off the top 10. And it's an 18-point gap to the best of Empire Motorsport A, and notably, you can see how the gaps are growing now in terms of the teams outside of the top 10, with TKSimSport Toa and CHR Motorsport both equal in points, but it's Toa who are ahead of CHR Motorsport based on result count back in the battle for P12, and it's a 10-point gap to Racing Forces, with Symphony Esports White, UKSimRacing Hunt and Revolution Sim Racing completing the Teams' Championship standings. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are the standings covered and updated after 2 rounds of racing, and of course in next week's broadcast, next round's broadcast, I should say, this coming weekend, we'll only be focusing on the standings after the round. We won't be giving a recap going into the round because we presented it today. Well, it's now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community in terms of what we do both on the virtual and the real motorsporting circuit, then why not check out our official website, that's uksimracing.co.uk. Alternatively, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so at our official Twitter, that's at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. We'd also like to take a brief moment to say a big thank you to our affiliates, and the 5 of them, of course, starting off with Swelly Omeda Sim Racing Coaching. And well, if you're looking to gain time, alternatively improve your technique on iRacing in particular, then Swelly Omeda Sim Racing Coaching could be the one for you to help take your sim racing driving to the next level. As the creator of the Motor Racing Checklist, whether you're looking to gain a 10th, improve your approach to race night, or develop your consistency, Swelly Omeda has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with Swelly Omeda being a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PSCC, you know you're receiving coaching from the very best in the industry. We also have Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment aimed to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Demon Tweaks, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realise your real-world motorsport ambitions. We've also got SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high-quality sim racing-related hardware. As a proud partner of Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports, and with in-house engineering and production facilities which combine Dutch design and high-end craftsmanship, SimLab is the go-to brand for quality sim racing rigs. And lastly, Amazon, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to Amazon Prime, Amazon Fire tablets, and Amazon Alexa. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it'll be time for our drivers to make the way to the United States of America for round number 3. It'll be brought to you live on Sunday the 16th of April 2023, and well, if you want to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to the UK Sim Racing YouTube channel today, because when the engines start in the city of Detroit in the state of Michigan, they're not going off until the racing is all done. And I can tell you one thing, well, those walls are looking very close and it being tight and narrow, albeit there are some extended straights to make overtakes. It is going to be hard fought, it's going to be bare knuckle, and you won't want to miss it. We have right now some firm favourites emerging in all 3 classes. In the elite class, of course, it's Philip Schwerker versus Hekon Gestad. In the pro class, we're seeing it is the rise of Thomas Asphaug, and in the AM class, it is Mark Johnson who leads the way. But the question is, who's going to be leading come the end of the racing in Detroit? Find out all that and more this Sunday. But until then, we've been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX11 Walsh, also known as Britain and Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.